What's up, everybody? This is Karak with ACG, and I'm here today with Johnny and Silver to do the best gaming podcast, number 449. By the way, thanks to you both, 449 podcasts. Is that not ridiculous?
It's so crazy. I still remember like when I joined you guys with like the back of my bedroom and my unmade bed in the back. It's like totally unprofessional.
My first podcasts were actually like in my room with a blur filter on because, you know, it's just my window with a sheet over it to stop sound from the crazy lady screaming on the inside and stuff like that. It was nuts, man. Silver, you're the only one. You've changed your room somewhat,
pretty much.
But you're And then Reg green screened
nightmare that it used to be.
Yeah, and then Reg green screened his entire back end.
Yeah,
his entire wall. He just said,
so we couldn't see the house plant anymore. Yeah,
it was awesome. And thank you to everybody here who's jumped into the podcast to join us up. If you get a chance, rate us on Spotify and iTunes. It absolutely helps the channel in ways I cannot easily describe. It sincerely does. Also, we've switched providers. And when we switch providers, I want to be clear on two things. Spotify will not have video for a while. Less than 0.02% of my viewers watched video on Spotify. And because of that, I stuck. And then I looked at what that number equaled. And I was like, oh, that number's like 4 people. And then I was getting shafted by Spotify. They kept deleting the account. They had Johnny will be back. He had to go. Yep. They had an account issue. And I just kept having problems with the Spotify account side being deleted. So what I did was I switched over to another provider that pushes the podcast to Spotify and then removes the account from them so that they can't, whatever technical issues they have, can't continue to happen. And it's helped out dramatically. But there'll be a little bit of crust. There'll be a little bit of, pardon my dust kind of thing.
Unbelievably frustrating.
As we get, it was because it was weird, man. I mean, it was just like deleted. I was like, whoa, what's going on? Why is this deleted? And then they're like, okay, it's fixed. And uploaded a video, and the next morning, the very same second. So it's obviously automated in some way. So I was like, sometimes we don't cuss, and I'll leave it not explicit as a check mark. And then sometimes if we cuss a bunch, I'll check mark it as explicit. So I was like, did I mess up those? But because they're a company and they're using AI, they don't know exactly what's up. So even they were like, we're going to have to give this to a tech guy to see what's even going on. Because I'm looking at your account, and I was talking to managers who were like, we don't have any clue. I was like, you know what? I'll just switch and see what happens. And instead, it's actually been great. The uploads are faster. We got Wednesday's upload last week done within about 45 minutes versus 5 hours. So was able to get it uploaded and entered.
Nice change, yeah.
Big Mac's in here. Death Proof Sublime. Stephen Rego. Sailor Mercury. Jeremy is in here. Lawman is in here. D3 Minstrel. D3 Minstrate, I think is what that is in here. Ransom. Aries is in here. Lawman, I said already. Yeah, all right. So thank you guys for joining up. Like I said, if you get a chance, rate.
Where did Johnny go? I have a funny thought about the passage of time in relation to the podcast. If you look at like out my window, for those of people watching the podcast, and you see the building there with the windows, that wasn't built yet when we started.
Oh, really? Wasn't even
building on. There was no building there. Yeah.
Damn.
When we started.
Damn. We've lived through the entire creation of new place of business, of a new location, or people to live in, whichever's in there.
Residential blocks. Yeah.
Residential blocks. Gotcha. Did Johnny tweet you at what's going on? He had a PC issue prior. Did he? Okay. I'll check my Discord. Johnny was having PC issues right when we started, and it looks like his PC is probably completely froze up. So he's gonna pop off and see if he can get that fixed. But thank you to everybody. I hope you're enjoying the reviews that you've been seeing. Banisher's review came out, and I got to say, it was sweet to see Banisher's do so well, reviewed insanely well. They already released an Accolades trailer, which I always find Accolades trailers weird, but they released an Accolades trailer already. Right. It reviewed quite well. It's doing good. We'll have to see how sales go because, you know, it's a don't nod game, moral quandaries. Sometimes people just don't want to have moral quandaries, but I personally think it is well worth jumping into if you like those kind of titles. And we have 5 people, or we did this morning, have 5 people streaming it all at once in our Discord and bouncing off each other and what they were going to do. And I thought that was pretty cool. I hadn't seen that before. Well, while Johnny's trying to fix his stuff, what have you been playing?
Mostly Helldivers, actually.
And it's up and running now, from what I understand, right? No issues.
No, there are still matchmaking issues on and off. Like I still have matchmaking issues getting into games with randoms, but that's about it. Like I haven't really had. I've had like 2 crashes, I think, since the weekend. I haven't really experienced any disconnects, so that's a major improvement. And I think for a lot of people, they've been able to log in. There hasn't been the login issues that we had over the weekend. So the server capacity upgrades that they've made seem to have worked.
Very cool.
So it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes this weekend as more players get in, because they've the player base has only expanded really as the game has seen increased success. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether they can meet those technical demands. I mean, respect to Arrowhead, because like the developers have really been in kind of crunch mode for the last week, where they've been working far into the night to fix this stuff. So my heart kind of goes out to them a little bit on that account. But obviously, people expect things to work, and they're right to expect things to work. And it's been frustrating for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Johnny? What have you been playing?
Hey, what's up? Sorry, my internet dropped and
No worries.
I had to reset it. I've been playing quite a bit of Helldivers 2 as well. Some of it was silver. We had a great time teaming up. And I've also been playing Infinite Wealth, which is, it's a big game. It kind of keeps on expanding.
So
Apsy was saying that last week, where I just kept like, is the game finally getting done? No. There's just no.
Yeah, keeps going.
Did you guys also see that Reg was saying that he had played and beat the island? He basically got the island set up the way you would you would assume. But then instead of playing the rest of the game, he watched another person stream doing the island.
The island.
And I was like, they might have something.
I got it completely maxed out, like 5 stars on all the different categories, maxed out and everything. That was like 39 in-game days that I spent in there. Completely forgot about like what I was doing, looking for my mom or whatever.
It's great, man. And he streamed it for me yesterday. I say for me, it was obviously not for me, but I complain a lot because it's one of the few games in the world I can watch on a stream and just have such a great time watching and enjoying people jump into. And some people are playing other games and are just now getting into Yakuza, which is cool too. It's got a long tail for people playing it, and it's a long game. So even if somebody gets it and plays for 20 or 30 hours, there's always somebody else just jumping in. It's been fantastic to see them do so well. I mean, I want another Lost Judgment, obviously, but I think for this one, they proved they know what they're doing. I mean, I personally think this is one of the best Yakuza games I've ever played. And I don't know about you guys. Speaking of that, let's talk about that. Let me just move my green screen a little bit. Okay, you're going to see a little bit of behind-the-scenes baseball here, babies. What would you guys say for Yakuza? I can't do it because the dogs are sleeping in front of the green screen. Would you guys say for Yakuza, this one in particular is the best one then? Or you guys like another one better? Because I think Johnny plays all of them, right?
No, I've played a few of them only. Okay. I've played Like a Dragon, the prior one, the man who erased his name.
Right.
I played those entirely. The others I've just dabbled in. And I also played Judgment. But I've always found that, I don't know, I always kind of had an issue with the real-time combat. The last one clicked a bit better for me, but it did always get a bit old. You know, when you run into the threatening man number 2000. Right. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna like spam my X button. I still enjoyed it, but I think that this game is much more interesting from a gameplay standpoint.
Isn't
just
that
because
true,
of all the different jobs you have? You know, like when you get bored, you can change into like a surfer, and you have completely different attacks and looks and moves. Like it's really cool.
Yeah. Silver, how many of you played? Because you don't play any. Okay, I knew you hadn't played many, but I thought maybe you had played one or two. So with Yakuza, I think, Johnny, I would agree with you, man. When you see Mysterious Stranger number 755, you're like, he's not mysterious anymore. And yes, I know that's, but you just look at it and you're like, okay, this. But what's going on with this one in particular is I think that they fleshed out the mini games more. So you do have the island, and it's more fleshed out. And the hotels that you were able to run were great, but they were in that small contained area. And so it felt like a building that you ran. This is building buildings, which is a different feel. And it just feels like there's more. And then there's the breeding stuff. And there's just all these kind of things, these mini game things that just continue to offer like pretty sound gameplay all the way throughout. It's very cool to see them do it. I mean, I liked beating up school kids in Lost Judgment, so I want to return to that. I would play a game where it was just him going to schools randomly and just kicking the shit out of 12th graders. Nothing was more enjoyable than that moment. But that was a heady moment in Judgment where I think this one has a good, solid top to it. Maybe some things aren't above. It's just a very solid game. You know, like there isn't any dumps that I've noticed in this one, at least so far. Also, for the amount of money that you pay, boy, do you have a lot of game.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, we'll talk about that in a little bit, the amount of time. What else have you been playing, Silver? We'll go with Silver, and then we'll jump to you, Johnny. Any other games other than Helldivers?
Still some Hitman 3 on and off freelancer. Also
Very cool.
Streamed a bit of that actually in the Discord. Also streamed some WRC.
Yeah, watched you stream that
as well. Yeah. So just some other stuff here and there.
Bouncing, basically. Yeah,
basically. But yeah, it's mostly just been Helldivers, which just has been a lot of fun, honestly. Like there is the gameplay loop is kind of fundamentally addictive, where rather than one more turn, it's kind of a one more dive kind of thing. Where I can, because there is, even though I have issues with the progression, there is this kind of hook to the progression where I kind of want to unlock this and try this out,
sure,
and experiment with it, because that is one of the fundamental appeals. It was for the first game where you had all these different stratagem options and equipment options that you could mess around with and play with and sort of try and synergize together. And a huge part of the appeal of the game is trying to sort of combine these things, especially synergize them with other players and see how that works and whether you can optimize runs through the missions.
Yeah, it's very cool to see games like that. It's also interesting that you guys are bouncing around on so many games like Hitman. I didn't remember you playing Hitman recently, at least. What brought you back? Was it was something changing, or did you just...
No, not a change. Just as a stealth action game. I just enjoy playing that game still.
Johnny, what about you? Other than
That's about it. I've played some League of Legends as well on the side, but mostly, Helldivers. And luckily we haven't had those like disconnection issues we had on the second day with you guys, because I think if I still had those, I wouldn't be playing. But the fact is, it has been working really well. And when you do have a gang, we were playing with Lemon and another friend, and we had a great time. For me, it's almost like magical when everything sort of aligns and you have a game that everybody's enjoying, kind of how it was when we played a few other games like Back 4 Blood or State of Decay, where it's, it's working really well for what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because the more people you add, the more chance of a problem. Luckily, they've talked about all the patches they're doing, and I think they even turned off the quick connect one. They're definitely having issues.
Chat mentioned that.
Yeah. So it's smart to do. It's unfortunate that it's hit that, because I'm sure I would have stopped playing by now because it was fairly repetitive. But there's the desire to go back to it, but then also it's already being eaten up by other games, and so then it's even harder. They also did that event yesterday where they had the robots attacking certain planets, which is always my favorite, the meta game kind of stuff. I love those ideas. So the fact they're doing that is fucking awesome. To me, that's the kind of stuff that keeps, like, I know events like Dying Light has events, and that's great. But when you're doing a multiplayer game like that, where it's cooperative anyway, the next level of co-op, which is seeing that you're making an effect in the universe, and then also seeing that change, that it's just awesome.
Yeah.
I think that over.
I have hated the robots, by the way. I don't know.
You're not the only one. You're not the only one. Yeah.
I mean, they are a substantial change to fighting the bugs because of they play a lot more like a tactical, more traditional, I guess, tactical military shooter.
Not only do they shoot you, but they're good. Like, because I'm used to other games. Like, I'm good. I'm pretty good in Risk of Rain 2 because I'm always moving, so it's really hard for them to actually hit me in that game. But in this game, it doesn't really matter how you move. Also, you're not that mobile compared to Risk of Rain 2. But like, I'm just getting slapped. You know, it's really difficult. You really do have to find cover all the time, and really changes.
It's good. And friendly fire being on is one of the better things. I mean, you know, it causes.
It is.
It's just there's one of two things. If you're really squishy and you die really quick, that's one way to make sure a player's careful. But the other way is to do like friendly fire in a co-op game. I like that. I think that makes sense. If you're dropping grenades on top of people or you know what have you, some games you can get away with it. But if it's a co-op game online like that, it only makes sense. For me, first of all, I want to say thanks to all the new YouTube members we've got. You can join the Patreon if you become a YouTube member. That's been awesome. I think we've had about 30 or 40 come in the last 2 or 3 days, which has been pretty cool to see new people jumping in to the Discord and sort of seeing what that entails. It's been a blast to do. I have been playing some games that I can't talk about, but I did finish up Banishers, and I'm restarting that. I'm going to play it through again, which is rare for me. But I think Banishers has enough moral quandaries that I wanted to play it again. I talked to Absy about it on Wednesday, and by the end of the podcast, I sort of hyped myself up to play it again, and I'm doing it streaming to the Lenovo, just sitting in bed playing it, you know, running around because it doesn't.
That's a good game to stream too, because you kind of sit back and
you're sitting back, you're just relaxing. You can go through a couple quests, and you can sort of do your thing, but. It is such a different title compared to the stuff we're seeing coming that it's nice to play that because I know it's sort of a palate cleanser compared to what we're going to see here soon. And, you know, whether it be like your big Final Fantasies or your Dragon's Dogmas, which are a completely different thought process in my brain.
You know, something funny, when I watched your video, I was like, I realized you're running everywhere in that game. Or not like full running, but, you know, you're jogging everywhere. Right. And it just struck me how funny it would be if we actually did that in real life. Imagine like,
just jogged.
You know, you're going to, I don't know, like you're going to work, but you're actually jogging. I mean, some people jog to work, admittedly.
But I get what you mean. If the mode of normal training,
it's almost like
normal walking was
running. You know, like when you're a kid, you run everywhere, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
If you're going to the store, you're running to the store. You're not walking. And it's funny how like in games, and that game just reminded me of that, how it is like a bit silly when you look at it, but also it makes sense. You don't want to
I mean,
no reason to dally.
I agree, and that is one of the reasons why I actually walk a lot in games from A to B and take the time to do it.
Walking the walk, like looking around and taking it all in.
Especially in Banishers, walking is really crawling and running is really walking. So even if you run in that game, like he's definitely not spry. And he's got that really rough, turned around kind of look.
Oh, yeah. What was that Mars game you also played that you were like sort of walking everywhere?
Mars Remastered?
No. Like a recent one that I think you did a video for.
Mars.
There had like a NASA aesthetic to it. It was like a walking simulator.
Invincible.
Yeah.
The narrative game. Yeah.
It looked really good, but that one was a bit more like, you're walking, dude. You're gonna walk.
Yeah, that one was definitely a walking simulator. So getting out of what we've been talking about, there's been some cool news recently. We're gonna definitely dive into the Xbox event, which turned out to be pretty much what we thought, but I do want to cover it because a lot of people don't watch the Wednesday one or just watch the Wednesday one, don't watch the Friday, so I want to cover it on both. But the first thing I want to talk about is Star Wars Mandalorian game. So this was originally hinted at, I believe, by at least one podcaster, and then now it's on Insider Gaming, but I don't think it's exclusive to that. Like, it's very difficult sometimes to source where the first mention of this comes from. So I don't want people to get mad. So just be aware that, you know, at least from what I can tell, I believe Grub mentioned it first, and then now we've got more data about it, which was from Inside Gaming or something like that, which is... And it's hard because somebody will say exclusive, and I'll say it's an exclusive, and then you'll find out there's nothing exclusive about it. And a lot of websites claim exclusive, and they're not. But so I do want to read a little bit about this. Respawn Entertainment is developing a first-person Star Wars Mandalorian game. It's in early stages of development. According to sources, the game will see the player take control of a Mandalorian bounty hunter, unclear who, set during a time when the Galactic Empire is dominating across the galaxy. It's your job as a bounty hunter to capture bounties, dead or alive, for cash rewards. So, and this does say, as first reported by Grub from VentureBeat, the game was being led by Respawn creative director Alavia, who left the studio to pursue his next adventure. According to Grubb, who didn't disclose it was a Star Wars game at the time, but has recently, the game will be focused on mobility and style as guiding principles. I thought that was actually interesting. Like the idea of, because Mandalorian's got the jetpack and we saw him misuse it through the first Star Wars movies and fucking crash and kill himself, Like now we're actually seeing something different. Does Johnny have a Logitech
Bounty Hunter game?
Does Johnny have a Logitech icon on his camera right now?
Yes. It's going away in a second. It's just because I fixed the focus
to fix your focus. Gotcha. Yeah, so I don't know. What do you guys think? Mandalorian seems good timing, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like good timing for a Mandalorian one? I think that's
so.
Fitting.
Yeah.
Anything you guys want to see from a Mandalorian game?
Huh.
I think, it's tough because, the first thing that pops up in my mind is the old Star Wars Bounty Hunter game for the GameCube, where you played Jango Fett. That's kind of, that was like kind of the Mandalorian game. So that's really the one that kind of pops up in my mind as like flying around the flamethrower and whatnot, and chasing bounties.
Yeah, definitely. I think that for me, what I would love is small adventures in many planets rather than like a big adventure in like a single or two planets. Because, for me, Jedi Survivor and, Jedi Fallen Order, I like those games, but I think the trade-off they did was that, especially in Survivor, some of the planets were pretty big.
Yeah.
But then, like, there weren't that many, or, they weren't also that
trade-off was there or noticeable.
Yeah, because I want to go to a planet where it's like a volcano planet, like some sort of diverse stuff, which can also inspire cool narrative chops, if you're going to a planet that has a distinctive thing about it.
I agree with you on the small, dude. Here's what I would want. Bounties, this is going to sound weird, so bear with me, but I would like it to where it's almost like a side mission in other games where go kill these pirates, but it's his job. And so there's a lot of them. I think it would be cool if there was a lot of them. And what if it was handled like a little bit like Nemesis, not Nemesis, but a little like that with Lord of the Rings, where maybe you take out a lot of them for a particular cartel, and then that cartel, comes after you. Or you take out a lot of them for the Republic, and then the Republic sends a Republic, defender against you, somebody who's, well-trained to take out bounty hunters. But the other thing I want to see is Mandalorian has hinted in the in the TV shows about customization. She forges an armor piece for him out of a piece of metal, all the weird shit that was going on. There was like ancient leather workers working with futuristic adamantium armor was a little weird. If you can hammer something to make something, then there's a chance that, even with forging, that thing is going to be a piece of shit in the future. But I love the idea of customization for the Mandalorian. If you're going to do this, let's do it. Let's have blades out of the arms. Let's have the flamethrower. Let's have plasma shooters. Right. Let's have ablative armor that, can withstand ballistics but not lasers, or lasers but not ballistics. Let's get in there and let's mix it up, man. Like, don't just say this is the Mandalorian single-player game, because fuck, man, we've got a lot of this is the single-player game of, and I'm really tired of them. But if you were to say, listen, we're jumping in, you're a Mandalorian, you're this, you're rising up the ranks, that'll matter. You get different tiers of armor, whatever. We know there'll be tiers locked off. We're going to send all of our bounty hunters out with shit, and if you die, too bad. We get that. I'm okay with that. But the idea of going to the dark side of an asteroid and walking in slow motion, low gravity across an asteroid because a Republic fucking dude is on the other side in his X-Wing waiting for like an Empire ship to fly away, but you sneak up and assassinate him. And like all these unique places, going onto other ships, trying to be stealthy to take out the bad guy, get out as quick as you can. Take us to other planets we've never seen before. One of my favorite planets is Geonosis, right? The water. Is that the water planet on
no,
in Star Wars? What's the water?
No, that's Camino.
Camino. Fucking loved it, right?
Yeah.
And I loved it that basically, Obi-Wan got his ass kicked there. That's what I want to see. I want to see the Mandalorian show up on a water planet, ride a fucking electric jet ski across the water, and have a battle against a guy on a fucking cruise ship. Like, I would use the environments. Don't just be like, this is a snow planet and you never avalanche somebody. That I don't know if you guys have realized that, but that happens in every game. A volcano planet, the only thing that really happens is you can step in the lava. It's like, let's have the place be fucking turmoil, man.
The heat doesn't sear your skin off.
The heat doesn't. What if your weapon
close to the lava? Yeah,
bro. What if you land and the hazard stops your hot weapons from working, and so you land with the wrong armament to take out this Republic guy, and now you got to figure out, oh fuck, the plasma can only shoot a half as long because it's too hot and it overheats. I got to use my weapon. What if you can dip the weapon in fucking magma and do extra damage when you fight the guy? Like, let's rub some dirt on it. Because these games are starting to say, here's name of. Here's Mandalorian. Here's a Jedi game. Here's this. Here's that. We saw Survivor with just zero thought process, this new Jedi Survivor. There was absolutely emotionally and creatively bankrupt game. Whether you like it or not, it is creatively bankrupt. It's got Dark Souls fucking bonfires. Like, everything about it is taking, but it's not modifying. And if you're going to do this, these are the guys. I truly believe this. I truly believe this is a company that can look and say, you know what, man? We're not just going to say it's a Mandalorian game. Here's your flamethrower. Here's your here's a fucking, and you go and you kill this guy. I believe these guys are one of the teams that might do exactly what Johnny said, and that fires me up, man. It fires me up. Low gravity. We saw it work in Starfield, or zero gravity battles. Imagine in The Mandalorian, man. Imagine your flamethrower pushing you around the fucking inside of a spaceship as you're trying to fly and fucking take out the bad guy and lighten shit on fire. That, to me,
I feel like
would be the game I want.
The Galactic Empire is kind of the wrong setting, though. What would really get me potentially excited would be like the Mandalorian Wars.
Yeah, you hit it nail on the head. Do you mean the time frame they just said? And the empires, and I agree 100%.
Where you're because then that would open up like potential for like fighting Jedi and stuff like that as well, potentially. And like maybe running like special operations on different planets or whatever, magical. Like being part of like an elite squad like Republic Commando, an elite Mandalorian squad or whatever. And I know that generally like those Mandalorians generally ran like uniform armor, but you could maybe make an exception for like special forces where they were more like individual, like just like in Republic Commando, where you have that commando squad that has,
but they become a special commando squad,
they kind of customize their own armor individually. To sort of reflect their personalities in that squad, because they're allowed sort of individual expression. Like that, I think there could be a lot of potential in that, and also like the lore there would be open enough for you to really build something of your own. I think exactly. Whereas I think like the Galactic Empire setting really sort of constrains you in terms of like what you can actually do.
Or let's fucking just throw this out there. Or these game makers get some balls, and by the way, I'm not teasing developers. I really do mostly mean publishers and people who sign the IP. But I'm just going to say developers as a whole here. The creators of these Star Wars games get some fucking nuts, and they lift them up, and they say, we're going to hit a time frame no one's hit. Like you said, Mandalorian Wars, though it was hinted at, and KOTOR, it was just hinted at. That time frame, a totally different time frame. Go to Knights of the Old Republic. Go somewhere where
the ancient Sith Wars, Exar Kun, where the
so I don't have
Mandalorians
to hear about
Exar
Luke
Kun
and Leia, or I don't have to hear about Darth Vader. Instead, I want to hear about Exar Kun or something where they're like, there's this evil guy out there, And by the way, I don't want to see a lot of Jedi in this game at all. Right? And
they like ultimate boss encounters or something,
Yeah, maybe. But the idea of this, and the idea of augmented armor, and the idea that Johnny said, imagine leaping like a fucking asteroid's breaking. Now I should just make this game. But imagine like an asteroid's breaking. You're leaping from asteroid bit to asteroid bit as it's floating through the air because a ship blew up the asteroid, and you're trying to kill this guy. And you're like, my job is to kill this guy, not to save these dudes, not to fucking fight the Republic, not to fight the Empire. I'm supposed to kill this guy. And your job is to get there. What if they time you for the kills? There's all kinds of shit they could do. And I do actually believe this is a developer that will look at those ideas. Whether they can deliver them in a time frame that is fundamentally sound financially, I don't know. But if they give themselves 3 years and not the 18 months we've seen some IP-named games take, or 12 months in some cases, then we could see something awesome. And I'm really excited for it. And no bonfires. Get rid of that shit. I mean, stormtroopers aren't fucking that much that they just keep recreating every time you go to sleep. Instead, have it be about really about the exploration too and the travel. You know, Survivor tried that a little bit, and so did Jedi Fallen Order, where you were, you know, doing some climbing and shit, but it always sucked, right? It sucked balls. You get to the top of a place, stormtroopers up there, like, how'd you get up here, jackass? Like, what the fuck? What are you doing? A kangaroo that, you know, can mountain climb couldn't get up here. Why is a single stormtrooper up here? But with him, that might be where the guy's hiding. Or what about automated defenses at an enemy's base? What if you take too long, and the longer you take, the more defended the guy becomes? What if you slip up, and instead of dying, it's like, now they know you're coming? You know, like the Telltale games, John will remember this. Instead, it's like fucking, it's like, you know, Bob has been informed and is upgrading his defenses when you find him. I love that idea. And that's not Nemesis.
That type of dynamic stuff gets me so fired up.
Dude, it's the shit.
Right? It's pretty rare, though, to see. I think chat is probably thinking we're tripping balls. Like, this is never going to happen.
If chat thinks we're tripping balls, then chat, I love you, but you're sort of part of the problem. Yeah. Be ambitious. Well, we're at the starting of this. Be fucking ambitious. Make your desires known, because developers look on Twitter. So state, you know what I'd love to see from a Mandalorian game? And then tell somebody who's big, who has a couple 100,000 subscribers, pay them and be like, retweet my shit, bitch. So that it gets in front of these guys.
We don't hear a lot of people like advocate, I guess, for this type of stuff that often. And you know, it comes back to what we talked about a few weeks ago about like how when you're a kid you have all this creativity and, you know, wonder for life, and it sort of gets beaten out of you. Event after event.
Sexual encounter like after sexual encounter. I get you.
Yeah, games are, you know, a little bit there for some developers where, you know, they're sticking to the tried and true so much that. And Johnny, it's almost like you can't get out of your box. Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say this is exactly it. Depending on the engine they choose, imagine stating, we are using Unreal, and it'll have Nanite and Lumen. And you're like, who gives a fuck? All Unreal 5 games have Nanite and Lumen, or the ability. We don't care about that. But if you say we're using their story and narrative systems that are built into Unreal, and we're going to allow for these things to occur and these augmentations to happen, that's what should get gamers excited about something. And personally, I don't think, you know, you're going to see people saying it'll be none of that. It'll be none of that until people continually demand it. And then somebody, including one of us, what if one of us wins the lottery? What if somebody listening to the podcast becomes a developer? They bring that fire in and say, you know what I haven't seen? I haven't fucking seen this. And that's what we need, is for people to say, and, you know, everybody's worried about finances. Realistically, layoffs.
Rightfully so as well.
Rightfully so. But do you know what fights that, guys? Investment due to fucking interest. And if you say this is a Mandalorian game that's a first-person shooter and it's going to be like Call of Duty, the interest will be much less than if you say, hey, look at what we're doing. This, and you get interest, vested interest creates investment, and that's how it works. And I hope people don't lose that in the sign of the times right now. And I know why they would. I absolutely understand. But I'm telling you, I'm not going to sit here and dumb down my fucking ideas on what I want from a game, because we have the best technology we've ever had in history for these kind of things. And if Witcher 3 changes from their engine to Unreal, it shows to you that people are looking at that to do these things. And that's what I want. Go ahead, Silver. Sorry, I'm off my soapbox. I apologize.
And yeah, just agreeing with you. And or like, because for me, like when I hear Mandalorian game set in Galactic Empire, what I think is, oh, I played that in Bounty Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would need something. I need something different, or something else to sort of compel my interest there. Yeah, agreed. Right, because go ahead.
No, continue your thought there.
I just wanted to add real quick that Yakuza did this for me. And this is another reason why I'm fiery on this. The new Yakuza changed the location.
Completely different change.
And the investment is obviously higher from people who still like Yakuza. So I'm not even talking about new people. I'm talking about the people who love it. Changing it up a little bit, not a little bit in this case, but really changing it up, is where the long-term investment is coming from that I didn't see with Man Who Erased His Name. And they still liked it. But what I want is people to say, that fires me up. And when I go in our Discord, the best thing about our Discord, the best thing about you guys on the podcast is we're fired up. I'm not going to lose that just because we have layoffs or whatever. If we do, guys, we're going to turn into this cogwheel of bullshit. where we're just for 5 years spamming shit out until the industry sort of rights itself. I'm hoping that they went for these guys and chose this because they know these guys will do something unique. That's my hope. Go ahead, Johnny.
I was going to say that it's hard to put our fingers on why exactly those games succeeded. But when you look at games like A Way Out or It Takes Two or Nier Automata, and the thing that I'm joining those on is the fact that they have changing gameplay.
Right.
You know, like the camera changes, the gameplay changes, right? And you have so much diversity of gameplay, and they're not afraid of saying.
In particular,
It takes two, right? So many like different mini games and perspectives and things. Yep. Like there's a fighter moment in the game, which was fantastic. You know, this is the sort of thing that I would like to see more too. Is the creativity. It's like, you know, you're talking about the Mandalorian. What if there is a bullet hell segment, you know?
Yeah, right.
Or
exactly.
Like the asteroid thing you talked about, that could be a mini game almost. Or, you know, maybe you have a fighter moment in there. There's so many things you could do with that type of stuff, with switching it up.
Yeah. I think also when we look at this, I'm absolutely in agreement with that, because when I play Yakuza and then play other games, I'm always waiting for some board game to be announced in the game, or a card game where I'm like, this game doesn't have a side thing. Interesting. Where I would like to see some more of those. But I think also with Mandalorian, like upgrading your ship would be cool. What if the ship is faster, so you know you have more of a time limit if some of these are time-based? I wouldn't mind that. Just all depends on what they're going for.
Maybe there are detective elements where you have to track down the target.
Absolutely. Yeah. By the way, I do want to point out, you guys both mentioned It Takes Two and A Way Out. Banishers is identical. Banishers is very much those games in all ways because of the couple that you have. The Antia and Red. It is very much in that same vein. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm excited for it. I don't know about you guys. I don't know what the time limit is, but I would say, you know, what are we, February, right? 2024. Yeah. So probably 2026 for this. 2.5 years would be a good development time. To me, this is an exciting time, but I love Star Wars, and I would love to see them nail a Star Wars versus the, you know, here's a Star Wars game, and it's got pieces of everything else.
It's going to be really interesting to see like what they specifically do with Outlaws.
Yeah, true. Because Outlaws, for anybody who doesn't know, Outlaws is the Ubisoft one. Outlaws, they've made it pretty clear that this will be the smallest of the Ubisoft open world games ever. And I told you guys that I was mad because Star Wars is the biggest universe ever. So I'm like, what? But it'll be interesting to see if they do a nice contained title, right? Because I think we can agree Jedi Fallen Order was sort of that. It could have been bloated. It was a little bloated, but not too bad. You had some ponchos you wore, you know. It didn't really get too bloated, you know. But yeah, man, I'm excited for it. I think we're probably in good shape with this, but we'll just have to see. Anybody in chat, if you have any other ideas for the Mandalorian game, put them in, and I'll try to read them. I think that there's a lot of excitement around this one, and hopefully it will pan out and be worth it. I guess that's just sort of how we come out of this, is that my excitement, I hope, is matched by the people who got the IP. Because I'm going to tell you guys, if I was a developer and I got the IP for Mandalorian, I would be out there fucking like doing kicks in the middle of the road, because that is a big get, and it's something that they could do wonderful things with. Moving on from there, let's talk about the Xbox event. Did you guys if you guys didn't watch it, it's fine. Did you watch it? Did you follow it? Anything?
I did not watch it.
Did not watch it. Johnny?
But I did see your coverage of it.
Okay. Yeah, I've only seen your video about it.
Okay. So basically, it is what we thought. So we don't need to cover too much. 4 games we now sort of know are the ones that I discussed in the video, which is your Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, Grounded, and Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, Grounded, and Hi-Fi Rush. So it's interesting when you look at the way all these companies are going. Sony in the last 2 weeks, I don't know if I did mention it in my thing, but Sony's discussed that they want to become more financially aggressive and more game IP aggressive by going into PC, which you guys saw with Helldivers, you know, PC and PlayStation port at the same time. Microsoft is now saying they're looking at that. And here's what's interesting, guys. Go back and look in the last month at what Nintendo is talking about with the Switch 2. they have been dropping hints of changing the paradigm, changing completely what they do, which I think Nintendo has a pretty good history of that. From the Wii U, it wasn't successful in the same way, but it was a different thing. The GameCube was a different thing. The N64 was cartridges when everybody was CD. And then you go into the Switch and you see sort of like this completely different idea. And they're also sort of investigating who and what and when and where to put their titles and how to deliver their titles. They did the Ubisoft and them mixed together for Rabbids versus Mario. So you see these cool switches. Is there anything you would want to see from these companies when it comes to working with one another? Is there any magic where you would like to see a certain IP on another, or certain IP from PlayStation get to the PC, like Bloodborne maybe? Is there something out there that you guys would like to see in a place it isn't currently?
I mean, I hesitate to mention anything specific, but just in general terms, yeah, like seeing those walls get broken down, and just more crossplay, more open platform. Yeah, cross saves, cross platform, more like open accessibility for stuff. That excites me because that broadens the scope of people who are able to experience and play stuff. And I want as many people playing stuff as possible and experiencing stuff.
What about you, Johnny? Is there anything that you would want to see?
I don't know really, because I think we're seeing so much already that, comes out, that I don't know if there are things that are sort of forever exclusive at this point.
Right.
When you look at Sony, it's almost an assumption now that stuff will come out on PC a year or two later.
Right.
I know for a lot of people we talk to in our Discord, they're like, oh, I'm waiting 2 years until it comes out on PC, for certain games that come out on Sony's side. So I think we're kind of there in a way. I would like to see older titles, like you said, the Bloodborns, or like the titles that are still forever locked behind exclusivity. I think those would be great to see.
Would you double dip, or do you guys double dip?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I definitely double dip. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you guys, I think on Wednesday we're talking about it. How playing Horizon, for example, with mouse and keyboard made you feel more competent.
Yeah.
And I really resonate with that because, and it's not even that you're like, you magically become, a good player or anything, right. But it is that it kind of equips you to do stuff in a different way, have a different play style sometimes. Because guess what? Maybe now, because it's easier to move the camera, you can rely more on the skills that are aim-based, right, as opposed to having to,
traps
use
or something.
The crutch of some of the other stuff. So I find it cool to play a game through a different lens in that sense. But I would say it has to be different enough. So, if I played a game on PlayStation and it comes out on PC and it turns out to be a controller game that I'm going to play like in the same way, I probably won't, unless there's new content or
right.
Something.
That's totally fair. Yeah, that I get what I absolutely do see that could be a point of you need some kind of return, not just better graphics.
The
right?
same,
okay.
Yeah.
Silver, anything to add?
No, not really. I mean, I double dip ignorantly quite often. It's really weird how much I double dip. I think with games, I think there's just like a fundamental sense that I want to be covered in case I get
right.
the mood to I want to play this at my desktop, or I want to play this on the console or the television, or like whatever, what screen I want to play it on. Or I guess there's just some psychological compulsion there to feel like I need to be covered.
Yeah. I know I've got some patrons and some super chats, I guess, that I'll read in a bit. And thanks for those people. Thanks, especially patrons. I know that, I do spam you with like, here's what's coming, here's what I'm doing, here's my video. But I appreciate you guys occasionally popping off questions too. It's very, sort of the highlight of my day to see to talk to patrons directly and see some of the stuff that you guys want answered. But I will say with this, I think the writing on the wall was there for a long time for this to happen for all the consoles in whatever way they do it. Sony held on as long as possible, and their CEO last week stated very clearly that they just were not making the money on the hardware that they wanted to make. And one way to become aggressive is to push that multiplayer or push that multi-plat. And this is something I know that people got mad at me. I think this is back when I was on the Defining Duke podcast, where I was pushing for the occasional title to be multi-plat, and people, just did not like the idea. And it's like, listen, guys, it's not going to remove FOMO will not go away. All these guys are doing 1 year. Sony has definitely got some multi-plat ideas, but for the most part, Microsoft has already stated they look at games that have already started to not sell as well. They look at games that are older. So if you want to buy a game and play a game early, like I do, I own a PlayStation and I own an Xbox, and I play those games early. I play them the day and date that they're out. And then if they're also on PC a year later, then I'll decide to double dip. It's the same thing that's going to happen here. It genuinely is. And then you also have Game Pass games. They very clearly stated that the games are still coming to Game Pass day one, which was another rumor. Oh, by the way, I do have to say, hand off to Phil for sort of dropping the hammer on the leakers. He did definitely, right at the starting where they're like, are either one of these this or this? No. And people said, no, not yet. And it's like, well, not yet. That's the future. Future's unpredictable for everybody. In 10 years, we could see Sony publish titles on Xbox. We've seen it in the past where they published on Sega Genesis. But it is just funny where, like, he was definitely dropping the mic on a couple of these leakers. And I do think that's also useful. That's one of the reasons why I didn't go out and about on this particular leak, because it smelled off. And so now that we sort of get the idea of what they're doing, what smelled off was their idea and why they're doing it. That extra bit. It's like a jigsaw puzzle with the center missing. And so now that you sort of see the center, and then you see Square state very clearly, we're going to start making better games and they're going to take longer. And you're like, interesting. And then Namco yesterday, same exact wording. We are going to make more quality games and it's going to take us longer. And you're like, okay, so all these companies are shifting priorities. The biggest companies in the world are shifting priorities. You can't tell me it's not a massive shift in priority for Activision to be owned by Xbox. Huge priority shifts on everybody and how they're going to deliver their games. So you'll still have FOMO. FOMO is a thing. They're still going to say, here's a year of exclusivity. And as Phil said, and as everybody knows, there's two things there's two things. One thing he said, it doesn't mean every single game in any way, shape, or form will go on any platform. So I do not want other consumers to think that's going to happen. That one we know, because that doesn't happen anywhere, even on a multi-plat third-party company. Many times you'll only get that third-party company game on one of the platforms. That's one. But the second that I think's interesting, when you look at the way all of this is playing out, to me, keeping Game Pass and having the games day one, and then buying Activision and doing this and seeing Sony and seeing Namco state their stuff and seeing the Embracer stuff, while they're late on their choices, I am happy to see what I consider to be 3 or 4 of the biggest curmudgeonly, ironclad in their normal priorities companies shift and change. I am happy to see that. And that's the most positive word you're going to get from me about Square ever. But that's pretty, it's like seeing them change. I think it's good. I think the change is good. Whether that change is mostly PR driven, I think we can all agree it is. But, there's some thought process there, which I'm happy for. I want to see them do that. It was weird though. Namco was saying we want to make better games. I'm pretty sure Armored Core 6 knocked it out of the park when it came to quality. So not all their games were like Forspoken, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, from Square. So not that they're Namco. I'm just saying.
Do you think it's possible that, like in the distant future, we have Game Pass? Like we talked half jokingly about like Game Pass on the Switch, right? But like Game Pass on PlayStation, where people can access the platform from like every other system. Because if that were to happen, that basically would mean that Microsoft would be happy for people to play all of their games regardless of platform, because ultimately what they want is to sell the service, right? More than
I feel like Microsoft is kind of already on that philosophy more or less, where the barrier is more on Sony's part on that front than it is on Microsoft's.
Yeah. Also, with iTunes changing their tune, bad pun intended, but iTunes changing is a huge deal. Sarah Bond isn't happy with the full change, but prior to the Activision Microsoft purchase, the biggest news was that Microsoft and iTunes, or Microsoft and Apple, were going at each other consistently because iTunes stated the only way to get your store on our store is to make sure that every game within your store is seen by our testers. And of course, that wouldn't work. So January, they reversed that and said, okay, no, you don't need to do that. But they added a fee on there that's pretty egregious. So Sarah Bond was really unhappy. She tweeted about it and was like, this is sort of a step backwards in what we're looking at. Now, would Microsoft still make money? Yes, but not the money that you expect. And it's just Apple being Apple. They control it, right? That's the way it is.
Yeah,
they control it. But with Game Pass being on other things, Johnny, I would say that you could see that, Johnny, but if they continue to do hardware, what you would see is a Game Pass with a different term or name, and it wouldn't be the first-party titles. I could see them doing that.
Like a Game Pass Lite.
Game Pass Lite or something. I'm not saying that'll happen, and I think it's far off because I do believe that people are missing the largest fucking elephant in the room right now. Bill mentioned multiple times, and he clarified, by the way, one time as well, consoles on other consoles. The rumors I am hearing is that the Switch 2 is a major platform for them. And their desire to be on the Switch 2 is probably, in a way, morally higher than PlayStation because Switch 2 sells well and it's not considered a competitor in the same way. It's a different ecosystem.
It's a new market segment that they can access.
And it doesn't directly, because remember this, Johnny, every single title that they put on Game Pass and or sold on Sony's systems, they lose 30%. Sony takes 30%. And Microsoft has been quite open about them not wanting to give every game because they're giving the other company money. So a POW World, right? A POW World on Sony. Well, sure, Microsoft's doing well, but they're getting 30% of every single sale. You're looking at the coffers of your competitor. Yeah. So that's why certain choices are being made. And he made that clear. He was like, there is a lot of business that goes into this. But it's a fascinating time, guys. It's fascinating, man. It's like, and handhelds. Handhelds are going to be a thing. They are going to be a thing. There's the rumored Xbox handheld. There's rumors of OEM, which would be Xbox basically saying, here's the hardware shoot. Here's the template that we want. Lenovo, go build yourselves an Xbox, handheld, just like they did with WMR. You guys didn't own Microsoft WMRs. You owned Lenovo or Asus, or well, I mean not Asus. What ones did you guys own for WMR?
I do own a WMR. I forget I forget which one it is though.
Acer? Maybe.
No, not Acer. It is.
What was yours, Johnny?
It is Lenovo. Yeah.
Lenovo.
For VR, mine is the Pico.
Pico. So there we go. So you've got these. That's not WMR. I thought you had a WMR prior, but I know a lot of people.
I did have the Lenovo.
So there you go.
That's true.
Yeah, and so that's the way Microsoft handles some of their stuff, which is here's our template, you guys build. It removes them from the hardware R&D, which isn't huge. A lot of people were saying, oh, there's a ton of hardware R&D. Why would Microsoft enter a small market? Can I point something out? The ones that are currently in the small market had to do R&D. Asus and Lenovo had to do R&D in the same way Microsoft would have to. So there's sort of a misunderstanding of how R&D would work. You still have to do R&D on any handheld, regardless. And they are happy to sell to a small. Portal had to have R&D done. And Portal, I don't know how Portal sold, but it can't have sold gangbusters because it's still in stores and you never hear anybody talking about it. So there's just all this crazy stuff. It's really exciting, man. It's exciting. I came out of that going like, okay, that's pretty much what we planned. Now it's up to Switch 2 to wow me.
I mean, I think Portal sold pretty decently as part of the orange box back in the day.
I meant Portal, the handheld for PlayStation.
I totally missed it.
I apologize. You know why you missed it? Because we never talked about
it. People forgot about the new Portal.
Yeah, so there we go.
It's coming down.
So everybody understands Silver went back 2 decades because he couldn't remember that the Portal, and we were talking about handhelds. That's how much the Portal is talked about. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm excited for this, guy. I'm excited to see what everybody wants to do. I would love to see more Raving Rabbids / Mario stuff, too. Master Chief versus Mario, maybe not. But, there's some stuff there that would be exciting to see.
Some crazy crossovers.
Some crazy Spyro, or they own Crash Bandicoot.
Gears
Crash
of
Bandicoot
War.
versus Mario. Gears of War versus Mario.
Kirby.
Yeah. That does bring up a point with like new future hardware, streaming, all that kind of stuff. Do you guys see yourselves changing your platforms as you move forward? I don't mean companies like a console. No, I don't mean Sony PlayStation. But I mean, do you guys see yourselves embracing streaming? Do you see yourselves alternating towards handheld more? Do you see yourselves sticking with a console and a PC, or just the PC? Is there a future where you see that changing in the next 5 years for you personally?
No, I don't think so. I think streaming to me is still kind of too unreliable.
Makes sense. Absolutely fair.
To really, for me to really commit to it on any level, where I prefer just the reliability of having like the physical system.
Right. Turn it on, hope it works, right? Unless it's held
pretty much. And then if it doesn't, try and troubleshoot.
Right.
MacGyver it or whatever you can do to get it to work. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have realistically gonna have a very hard time moving on from that. If that's where the trend goes.
Well,
in the future.
And you as a person value reliability. I mean, I've known that from you since day one, whether it be friends, job, whatever. It's like you may like to switch things, but you are a person who likes reliable stuff. Like this is the old reliable
and sort of consistent predictable outcomes. To a degree. Yeah.
Yeah. And anybody spending money should, right? I'm going to tell you, how many of these hardware devices would I buy if I wasn't reviewing and talking on the podcast? I would buy some of them, but there would certainly be purchases I would not have made, but I made because I felt like this is coming out and I should cover it, like the PSVR 2. I would never have got that day one. It just would never even enter my mind. I would have waited for the library. What about you, Johnny? You see
in terms of physical platforms, though, I don't have any typical loyalty to any particular one. Like I'll just as happily play on PC as I will on console or whatever it is. It's just whatever is convenient or feels appropriate at the time.
Gotcha. What about you, Johnny? Same way, or do you see yourself changing?
Similar. I mean, the consistency is really important for me because I like streaming. So for me, stuff needs to work. And that's also why I do a 2 PC setup. Because if my computer full crashes from a game, my stream is still up, right? So that's the level, like, I just don't... It really messes with my mental if there is something that's failing, like something's lagging or something is the audio is crackling, stuff like that. So I need it to work. And I think even if I didn't stream, I would be like this, a bit of a control freak with like the gear has to work type thing. But especially because I'm streaming, I have like a very internal high standard for like how it has to be,
And that goes even towards new stuff. Do you do you usually wait hardware out, or are you a day one adapter?
And that's a good question. What would be an example? So something
an example
like a VR
would be:
headset,
would you buy the PlayStation 6 if there was a rumor of a Bloodborne coming, but it launched with Astro Bot and a Horizon? Like, or would you wait?
Yeah, I probably would, because I think the error bars around a console running are reasonable.
Yeah,
you would expect it to be overall pretty okay, have some issues. But with something like a new computer, I'll be very, very cautious.
Too many moving parts that are randomly slammed together.
Yeah, I don't move stuff on my computer very often at all. I just try to make sure it's working and it's reliable,
Yeah. Somebody mentioned mobile doesn't have the control scheme I enjoy. That's absolutely true. Mobile's rough. Touch controls suck. They feel terrible, man. And Microsoft is looking at mobile as well. Obviously the Apple, like I said, that's the biggest news. I actually think it's the biggest news this year, just that they're moving forward, because Microsoft is so set on making sure that they get on Apple, and Apple's so set on making sure they pay through the ass for it. So it's a very unique situation. And you have all these stores too. And somebody asked me yesterday, they were like, do you think Sony will make their own store? like Microsoft on PC, and I was like, listen, you can go to PSN and buy a game, right?
Yeah.
You can. The website is a store. The Windows Store is a whole different beast, both
Same
good
thing
and
in
bad. Mostly
Nintendo
bad.
and the Nintendo Store.
Same thing with the Nintendo Store. Yeah, so I don't see that kind of stuff happening. In the same way, I could see Game Pass hitting Nintendo. I could see that because those games almost never come to Nintendo in that style. Nintendo's very controlling in some of the stuff they do. I could see them throwing that on there and making a deal, but I also think that Microsoft has an unhealthy love affair with Nintendo, as we saw with the FTC documents where they're talking about buying them and they want to get closer to them and stuff. They're the unrequited love interest. It feels like, but they're just not in the same competitive space as the PlayStation. Any other stuff for the Xbox event that? I mean, it was. I told people not to expect anything because you don't do a podcast when you're announcing huge news. Oh, they did say two cool bits though. This holiday, new hardware. This June, new games, and next season, which we don't really know, they state the largest generational jump in console hardware ever. That's a pretty big claim when you don't know what Sony's doing,
So
but they did.
Just
Sarah
to
did say that.
Make sure I understood that. So there's new hardware coming out this year, but then
in
also,
holiday they're showing new hardware is what they said.
Oh, they're showing, and so I guess it's coming out next.
Or it could come
season?
out then, but I'm just saying the words she said.
Because if something comes out this year and then they're saying, oh, but the biggest is next season, would that mean like it's
most likely it's the cylindrical Xbox we saw in the FTC leak, where it basically just adds some memory, changes the controllers,
like a boosted version of the current.
Barely boosted. Yeah, probably cheaper, because these hardware guys try to get revisions in to make money. Remember, Sony just admitted that they've stated they made money on hardware before, but their CEO just stated that they actually are not doing well. Whatever the amount they're making must be insanely small. And they said, in fact, a lot of it was because they were doing deals and they were making even less on the sales. And then Microsoft has been open and stated they don't make money. So what they do is revisions, where they send the revision off and they revise it and they try to make a little cash on the side for each console being sold. So when you looked at the FTC leak, that new system was really just basically not a Pro. It was like a Slim. That'd be closer, where a Slim. And I think that's what we'll see. Or we'll see handheld. If we see handheld this holiday, that would be a mind fuck. If we saw a handheld from Microsoft, it would be good timing too, because did you guys see the news today? There were rumors that the Switch 2 is delayed until next year. There were some hints, some stuff talking about this holiday. There hasn't been anything solid, but it would be funny to have Microsoft do a handheld, have it be super powerful. Switch 2 launches isn't as powerful. I'd still buy a Switch 2 for the games, though. I mean, there's not going to be a Mario game on the fucking Xbox, whatever they call it, XXL, Xbox Titan. That's a big problem. Their naming conventions suck. So reading some questions from patrons.
Yeah.
Drewman says, what are your thoughts on Alan Wake 2 selling just 1.3 million? I feel like the industry paraded this game around only for it to still fall off a cliff. Did the Epic exclusivity on PC kill it? I believe 1.3 does not include one of those types of sales, does it not?
I mean, first of all, I think the framing of it as falling off a cliff is highly inaccurate. This is the biggest sales at release Remedy has ever had. Fastest
selling game of all time for them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't think you can accurately frame that as the game falling off a cliff.
Right.
I mean, we're 6 months in. It sold 1.3 million. It hasn't turned profitable yet. That's true, but we're also only like 6 months into its lifespan. Like at this point, 5 years on from 6 years on. Well, we're not that far into the year yet, but on from Control. Control has sold what, 4 million or so.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is.
Yes.
So
that is exactly.
And currently, I think Alan Wake 2 is selling like 50% more or so in terms of units shipped than Control. So if we take that, that'll mean like 6 million or so if it continues to sell at that rate in total. So I mean that's not bad. So I don't agree with the framing of it as the sales going off a cliff and it failing on that level at this point.
Maybe they're just comparing it to, you get a game like Pal World, right? That explodes.
Yeah. Or like Helldivers already. Like, yeah.
Yeah, or like Helldivers already. A very good point. Yeah. So to me, they've stated that the prices remained high as well, indicating they'll do a sale at some point. But they also had a lesser development cost because of just doing digital. There were a couple things they said there. So I'd assume they'll recoup their money pretty quickly. With Remedy, they're probably also happy that they did all those choices and it is selling well, because that hasn't been the case. I mean, it hasn't been the case with their games. Their games have notoriously, even the remake of, they're classic games that are special and cherished, but they're in a very particular niche. And the niche is B-movie, campy horror. And while a lot of us like it, if it's done a certain way, third person like that, some people just aren't going to gravitate towards it. But I would assume a sale or two and they'll be fine. I know with Control that you said they sold 4 million. I'm sure they're financially, they made their money from that. I mean, I would assume. Did they ever say if Control became financially
as far as I know,
making money?
Yeah. I mean, if you can't turn a profit on 4 million units sold,
that's a good point. I should have just said that.
There's a definite issue there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. If you're not making some money after 4 million sales, something is going on. Johnny says Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will look better than the demo, says the devs. So what's this all about? Give me the juice. Give me the deets on what we're talking about.
So the devs posted a tweet in Japanese saying something to the effect of they will make the graphics look better for the performance mode for people who were worried about some of the fidelity and stuff like that in the demo. And I thought it was interesting because it reminded me a little bit of that thing people say where like bugs will be fixed on release day when they do a preview. And like a YouTuber will state like, oh, all bugs will be fixed on release day. And we know for sure that a lot won't. That's kind of the vibe I got. But I guess it is, realistic to fix it up a little bit. I just think that if you're putting out a demo, you really do yourself a huge disservice by not representing the final product.
Bringing
in a
the
way.
A game. Yeah.
Yeah, like you got to bring your A game. It might be a very short segment, but it's got to be nailed, right? Because a lot of people will base their purchase on that.
Right. Did you see?
I just thought it was interesting. I don't remember the last time someone stated like, oh, the demo doesn't reflect the final product in a way. Maybe they do, and I just didn't see it.
I think some do, and you don't see it. But I think, Johnny, what's happening here is simply that Final Fantasy's expectations are insanely high. Yeah. And when you see cottage cheese textures, then the discussion becomes about a door, like the original game did. I'm sure you guys remember. Remember the door.
Yeah.
By the way, that'll be in my review. Whenever I review this game, it'll be like, remember the door? Because that was a huge deal. And I brought it up. Everybody brought it up. And we saw that in the demo, and we saw those issues. They're known for high quality on stuff, but I would say, this is me personally, every Final Fantasy game has had deficits. And at least I know with my reviews, I've always pointed them out. I think a lot of people do, but the actual package is worth more, which does happen. And you do sometimes get these perfect games, but it's pretty rare. Final Fantasy games look magnificent for the most part. They have magnificent ideas of grandeur, scale, and just these colossal, monolithic, epic looking battles and everything. But I think Final Fantasy 16 had some issues with those. There were times where I did a battle and I was like, this looks like beat 'em up robots with monsters taped onto the characters' faces. Like
Rock'em Sock'em robots.
Rock'em Sock'em monsters instead of robots. But I did see that as well, Johnny. And I saw some Digital Foundry stuff discussing it, and I looked at some stuff from the demo, and I was like, okay, But overall, I think that almost every game I play has some shitty textures somewhere. Has something somewhere. It'll really be depending on how in your face is it over the long span of the game, and you can bring it up.
Dude,
and say
we enjoyed
it happens.
Zelda.
Exactly.
Right? Both
right.
Well, I didn't like the first one as much, but it's like, yeah,
frame
there are low
pacing
textures
could be an issue.
everywhere.
Low textures could be an issue. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
It happens, but it doesn't. It really depends. Like some stuff can remove your enjoyment if it's super like in your face.
Yeah.
But I think they are pretty good with prioritizing and, you know, giving you the iceberg approach, which is the stuff you're looking at looks amazing. And then, sure, if you look like, you know, under the surface and way to the side, under the hood, yeah, like there's some roughness there. But I think they do a good job of like the stuff that matters and like, you know, you got your attention on looks.
I think some stuff like color can do a lot of legwork there, like it does for Zelda.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whereas if it's just like sort of bland brown textures, then the fact that they're low quality exacerbates that.
And I mean, remember Nier Automata, guys? That was actually a bit of an issue with the game because everything was pretty gray palette. And that actually accentuated some of the low textures in places.
Right.
And I can tell you right now, a game that you didn't notice this until the second, maybe third location was Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus has a desert location. I can't remember. It's like 2 stops of the train in, maybe 3. And that thing looked like hammered shit, man. Like you were walking around just going like, what the fuck happened? It looked like they had ported in Fallout 3. It was rough. And it was
is it because the other places look great and then that was the one?
And it was brown. The enemies were visible from farther away, so you saw their pathing easier. You started to see the wizard behind the curtain kind of thing. And you're like, damn, son. But then you passed by it. I think it's weird that you mentioned let me explain to you what I think people are expecting. So your iceberg idea is great because in icebergs, most of the under the surface is the weight, is where the stuff is.
Yeah, it's the chunk.
What I think gamers would like is an upside down.
Oh, an inverted iceberg.
So where, the majority of what you see looks amazing in a wider berth, and then underneath, there's some things that look rough, and we get that with normal games.
That looks rough.
And I think when you said what you see might almost need to be changed to what you focus on. Because if you're focusing on the characters and the battles and stuff like that, are you going to be pausing it to go, look at that rock? What the fuck? That rock looks terrible down there. Or if it was upside down, then for the most part, you're going to be seeing everything looking a certain way, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe when you're running, you see some pop-up, and that's it. And I think that's what people are hoping for, like the occasional pop-up stuff that we're accustomed to versus a landscape that looks raw because of, overall texture work. I know the performance and graphics modes are definitely a bit borked in the demo. That certainly came up where there was some blurriness, man. There's some Vaseline vision going on there. There was like, there was like you got dry eye and you're drip, 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 drip. And before you blink it, you look and everything's swirly. That was a little what it looked like.
For a game like that, I really debate whether I would go performance mode. I've recently really enjoyed performance mode for every PlayStation 5 game. I've done it for Last of Us 2 Remastered. Right. I think really every game that's had a performance mode, I've opted for that. Like Horizon Forbidden West especially really benefited from it, in my opinion. But this is a game I think I could see myself playing the quality mode. Because the combat is a bit less... I don't know even how to say it. I guess it's a bit more laid back or cinematic.
Reaction intention.
Yeah, there's less reaction required from it. I mean, there's a classic mode in it. We know there's all this kind of stuff. I absolutely agree with you, Johnny. In this game, if there's those issues, graphics mode's totally fine. Like, it's going to be one of those things where if I'm walking around and I'm seeing a lot of blurriness or whatever, and then I can play it and not see those, and it'll be at whatever the frame rate with a little motion blur, whatever they do, per object blur would be great. I don't know what they're doing. Then I would much rather do that. I will probably.
Oh yeah.
Like just from what I've seen.
Sometimes pop-in and stuff like that can be, worse, right, in the performance mode too.
Yeah.
So and I really recommend like people try both or like the different modes they have, because this is a mistake I've made in the past, which is like just stick with the default, which is fine, right? But a lot of times there is something unexpected where, like, for you it's better, and significantly so. So, and that was the case with Horizon. You know, like the default quality mode looked good, but I didn't like how the movement looked, and there were some kind of issues there, and the performance fixed it for me. So
absolutely,
it's just really good to try and see how they look.
Yeah, I would tell people this too. When you're jumping into these kind of games, especially like we were talking about, this isn't Horizon Zero Dawn. This is a game where you can pause at any time and cast spell. Like, it's a different style of game. So I would also suggest the same thing. I a lot of times tell people to try the highest graphics mode first, because the two things you're going to see is the lower frame rate right away. And you're going to see that as your initial impression, but you'll see the better graphics. And then when you jump, you'll see the smoothness and probably a step down in the graphics. And that'll be the big change. And you need to really decide to. If you start at 60, it is a little rougher to go back to a graphics mode. Because
especially like Spider-Man or a game like that.
Right. That's why a lot of times I'll walk away between graphics switch. So I'll switch graphics in Spider-Man even when I was reviewing. And I walk away to get my brain sort of, because I need to make sure I'm at zero level when I'm talking about these. So it's not like I turn this on, the other one's unacceptable in all ways, and you're a noob if you play it. That just sounds idiotic.
In music, we call that like resetting your bass or your bass line. You know, when you're mastering a song, what can happen is you're so close to it that you're no longer able to kind of view it objectively. And you're also so used to stuff that you don't pick up on things that could be bad, you know, or undesirable. So like you step away from it, and when you come back with fresh ears, you go, how did I not notice that the mids are completely, you know, and blown out?
And Johnny, we talked about
writing and editorial work as well.
Exactly. I was going to say, not only is it the same way in martial arts. There'll be times where you have somebody who is a grinder and they're trying a particular move a lot, and you'll see them doing it, and you try to train them, and you see them do it again. You're like, you know what? Let's try something else. Step away so that we can, your brain isn't going, I'm a little bit off, and then you're ignoring everything else, and now your initial starting is bad, but the ending is better, and now you have to go back and finish the initial. But I think with games this happens, guys, with developers. We've talked about this before, where a developer release a game and there's no tutorial, or the tutorial won't cover shit, and you're like, you can tell the person was too close to the game and forgot newcomers will not know what the fuck they're doing in the game. And it's like, that's why I wish a lot of developers who did tutorials would walk away for a couple days, then come back and go like, okay, sort of,
wait,
you know,
this
forget.
Tutorial sucks, dude.
This tutorial it doesn't even say how to block? What? You know, like that kind of stuff. Yeah, that would be awesome. But you were also talking about resetting your base. That happens with boss battles at night for me. I get that boss battle where I'm really close to winning at night, and I can't beat him. I can't fucking beat him. And then we wake up. We've talked about this. And it's not just tired. It's that repetitive where your brain is almost out thinking everything. And then you wake up the next day and you just ice that bitch. You skate him across, you barely get hit. You're like, ooh, what the hell's going on?
It is really satisfying. It almost feels like you know, the Matrix when you plug, I know Kung Fu, but it's overnight, your brain sort of does that.
And probably when you go to sleep, your brain does what it does and puts a bit of stuff in short term, puts a bit of stuff, you know, puts it in your brain palace, moves shit around, and suddenly you put two and two together and you jump in there. Like you said, you're Neo. You're like, shh, 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 shh. You're just blocking people. And you're like, dude, I feel I've got this.
You know what's funny to think about? This is totally incidental and like besides the point. But
that's all right. We're beside the point. The Beside the Point podcast, number 1.
You know how your brain creates like connections and stuff based on what you do. So, you know, like way back in the cave times, we were creating connections based on like running from lions and shit, right?
Yeah, right.
And all this type of practical stuff, like survival, making a fire, you know, getting a wife or whatever. Well, we still do that now, but now we have all these like wirings happening for like video games, social media, like you know, things that don't really map to the real world.
Right.
It's almost like we have all the, you know, all the
Imagine
wirings
a bunch of cavemen doing as much DMT as was humanly possible. That's what we live in our world. If you took a caveman and said, here's a thing, and he looked at a screen and saw another person, that dude would be like, spirit, demon, or oogla, whatever they call them back then. Like, you would definitely notice that. That's what it's like. You are right. The amount of data and weird shit. Imagine turning on a light to somebody who's never seen a bulb.
The sensory input.
Yeah, and that's why they even say the ADD is rising. They think people, issues with like all
Just
kinds of mental problems.
Commercials, advertisements flashing on TV and whatnot. Yeah.
No, but dude, I get it, Johnny. Like that's a perfect point. It is a perfect point that like our brains are wired for shit. Like, and that's why we treat games fans treat things like they do a home. Their console is their home. It's not really, but they're treating it like a tribe, and they're cutting off anybody who wants to fuck with their console. They're console warriors, and that's where it comes from. Is that they don't see realism.
They are deeply attached.
Yeah, their brain has said, I don't have a tribe home that I need to worry about, so I'm going to worry about this plastic box that a company shafted me over. And you're like, why? That doesn't make any sense.
Or with sports.
But it does make sense. Or with sports and hooligans.
True.
And yeah, dude, it's awesome. Yeah. And that's why I think that like we cultivate this conversation. We're not the only ones. I love it when you hear other podcasts, you hear people saying like, take a step back. Just take a step back. And that happens in martial arts. You'll have somebody getting mad and you'll be like, take a step back. You're not going to learn anything mad. Now, will you be able to hit harder? Will you be able to ignore something? Maybe, but you're not going to be able to learn the technique mad. You have to step back and you have to make sure your brain's open. You have to remove all that kind of stuff. But that it's a good. I just love the idea of some Cro-Magnon man picking up a switch.
I remember in Jade Empire, the first time I played through that game, I found it quite difficult. The combat system. There was one boss battle in particular that I struggled with.
Yeah.
And then years later, I came back to it, expecting it to find it difficult again.
Right.
And I just breezed through it completely on the hardest difficulty. I had no issues.
You
whatsoever.
had the wirings.
I just found it a complete cakewalk. And I have no idea still why that there was such a discrepancy there for me.
The first time.
I don't know. The second time it just completely gelled.
That's weird. Yeah. But I mean, I think that, dude, how many times you have you're built on the data probably of all the stuff you had done the first time and some memories were in place, possibly, and then other games you've played. Where you play. Have you ever played a really fast shooter and then you go to like Mech Warrior and you're like, oh my God, my guy's taking 7 hours to move.
Or Arma. To Arma.
True. Arma's the Mech Warrior shooter. Yeah. But I think that when we look at this kind of stuff, it's awesome to see that people are opening up to, whether it's new consoles or handhelds or streaming. I mean, my eyes have been open to streaming. You guys can go back. We deleted some of the old podcasts because they were just sitting there and, like messing up Google searches. But some of the old podcasts, I was very open about thinking, streaming would never work. And right now I'm getting a 7 ms ping from NVIDIA and playing and winning in Rainbow Six Siege often. And I'm like, where are we right now? And I do not have a fast upload and download speed. Certainly not when you take into account some of the numbers I'm seeing from others. But a good ping is definitely one of the biggest. Its download speed is actually quite small that you need for even a 60 FPS 1080p screen. So these kind of things are awesome that we can live through them. But I think there's a maturity level. I'm not mature. Don't want to point that out. But I think that when you grow up, let's change it from maturity, experience. It takes, it's like you sort of build up and start going, you know what? Maybe the third time is not the charm. Maybe the third time is a first time somewhere else. Like if your third time putting together a PC and your first two have been shit, maybe skip a gen. Maybe grab yourself a console. If the consoles haven't worked for you, hey, maybe grab yourself a PC. Maybe it's time to get away from the one-liners that people have used since Ben Franklin's days, which don't even fucking apply anymore. To this kind of stuff. Maybe you should step off and relearn some new things or learn some new things. Yeah, it's cool, man. I like this discussion because I do believe that we're headed that way and we're headed towards this awesome future. We'll still have all the same shitty shit. Cancer ain't going away. All that stuff's going to be there. So people are like, oh, Karak's just too happy. I'm not. What I'm saying is in the gaming sphere, we get new gamers every day and
life
there's something
too short to
life is too short. Yeah. But there's something awesome about a handheld device that can play games, VR, even if I'm not hot on VR right now, and a PC being able to be bought and pre-built because a person doesn't want to build them, and they get good ones, they're tested. Person wants to build their own. There's something very cool right now when I talk to people who are new into gaming. That's magical. And that's why I'm very protective of them, by the way. Like it happened yesterday in our chat.
Yeah.
Somebody had just jumped
kind
in.
Of innocence or whatever.
Yes. But listen to this discussion. Somebody just jumped in, 16 years old, got their first console. Now, if you look at entertainment, I challenge you guys, not in a perfect one-to-one, but tell me if I'm right on this. Almost of all the entertainment spectrums out there, gaming might be one of the few where a person's first console might be their first experience at all with a game. But that's not the same. Movies. You go to the movies. You have to buy a console to see that, but you can go to the movies. Your mom and dad are playing movies. Music. You hear it in the elevator. You hear it when you walk around. You go into a mall. There's music playing. Books. You can pick up a book. But when you get a game, it's the first entry. It might be your very first experience. So when I hear somebody say, and I bring this up, and Big Mac teased me on Wednesday, when I hear somebody say, well, Far Cry 5 is just a repeat of 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm like, oh, yeah. But
it's going to be the first Far Cry for somebody. Yeah.
The first one. And if I introduce this person to my book of woe as their first experience, and I have a big one, if I hand them my book of woe, and then you come in and you hand them your book of woes, all the mistakes and the hatreds and the fucking things that you dislike and the stuff, that person's experience will be like, what? And we get the same thing with I just had somebody say, well, you really should play Final Fantasy VII, the original, before you jump in. And I'm like, the fuck you say?
Yeah.
What in what world? In what world would that be a requirement? But when you look at these entertainments, you get these people who are 15, they save up, they save up their allowance and they buy a console. Other than going to a friend's house, that might be their first experience. But we're getting to a point, guys, where cable and streaming means somebody at a young age, if like I'm talking about people's parents who don't love games. I think we all know somebody's parents who are like this, who didn't want you to play games as a kid. This is sort of who I'm talking about. But now you jump in and there's all these avenues for games. I love it, man. But I also don't like the idea of our hatreds being slammed. I had somebody just yesterday tell me they still hate Sony because they fucked over Nintendo back in the day when Nintendo and Sony were going to release a console together.
In the 90s, yeah.
In the 90s.
Final Fantasy originally, yeah.
Guess how old he was? Guess how old he was? 23. He was not alive when it occurred. What does that mean? That means someone passed on that hatred to him. Yeah. That story and I've done it. I'm just as capable, but at the same time, you have to say, guys, come on. We are just as capable, but you also have to say, this person's brand new, man. You got to, I love those innocent people who come in and they're magical, man. They're like in there and they're like, wait, there's a Mario versus Rabbids? And you're like, yeah, dude. They're, what? Yeah. And they get to jump in with all of that shit. Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. Sorry, that was just my, I mean, I don't know. It just feels like games are different in that way.
And not only like there's that, like the new person jumping in, it's also like someone jumping into a new franchise for the first time.
Yeah.
And you hear so often like, oh, you have to play all the prior games in the franchise to get to this one. Well, guess what? My level of excitement to play Kingdom Hearts 1 is minus 10,000. Right. Like I would rather staple my nuts to the wall, being blunt, rather than like go and play Kingdom Hearts 1. No offense. But maybe I'd be interested in trying the latest if they have a good recap. And so don't shit on the recap in the game, because a lot of people say, oh, why is there a recap? Any gamer that's worth their salt will just play the first games before playing this one. Well, guess what? Like, maybe I don't have the time or the impetus to go back to fucking Kingdom Hearts 1.
Or Tales, the original Tales, like fucking Reg.
The seven original
you got
Tales.
7 original Tales games. It's like Reg is a special, unique flower. And that, to me, is great, but it's not it's not what you normally see. Yeah. Now, I will also, let's discuss sales for a second. This is also a big problem for sales. New gamers come in, and a game comes out for $60, Alan Wake 2. And that person just purchased a console with their allowance money, right? Or their job money. There is a very high chance they will get Game Pass instead, or that they will get a used game instead if those are introduced to them. And I do feel that we're getting legacy burn right now. MMOs that are long-term, service games that are long-term. and you only have a certain amount of hours in a day. And so I do think that these new games, this is why I wanted to talk about Star Wars, where I wanted a fresh, interesting perspective. Because if it doesn't grab you, people will return to the old stuff. We have people in our Discord playing Guild Wars. Guild Wars. Like, dude, some people weren't even on the internet at that point. Okay, not that long, but you get my drift.
Yeah.
So what we're positive about also does lead to a little bit of an issue with newcomers coming in where they look at something, and I'm talking about a new game, and they're like, well, man, I just spent $400 for the console. So when I hear somebody say, I hate Game Pass for this, this, and this, and then I talk to one of those people who's like, Game Pass just let me play 500 games, and I didn't have 500 times $60 to buy those. Like, what? There's different avenues for all of this stuff.
I just think all these experiences I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. So there's good and bad for this entire discussion and newcomers coming in, but it's interesting to me that we've got such an awesome way for people to be introduced to games other than mobile. Fuck mobile. Currently. Sorry. Dude, a mobile. Here's what I want, guys.
I was going to say, though, that for a 16-year-old, I would assume they've been exposed to gaming quite a bit through mobile gaming, probably, at that point.
They could be for mobile, but I have a friend, or not a friend, somebody I teach. In fact, two. One is, I can't remember, 16. One's younger, maybe 14. Parents don't allow them to have a cell phone at all, which I'm fine with. Okay. And then the other parent lets them have a cell phone, but they don't have a credit card to buy games. They don't have any accounts to buy games. So they can play the free-to-play games. But they're only playing mobile, right? So they're playing motion, touch. They're playing, touch-sensitive games, and isn't allowed to get a console until they pay for it. So, yeah, you're right. There will be people who've had an introduction to games, for sure. Going to a friend's house, staying the night even, But I think that's a one-off versus a book.
And it's also something entirely different from, or not entirely, but basically somewhat different, fundamentally.
Yeah, it's awesome times, man. I'm excited and at the same time a little bit worried, Let's see. Jack says, Jack's arguing. He says, not that it matters, but didn't Nintendo screw over Sony, not the other way around? Dude, I don't even remember. That was 20 years ago. And both have said different things. But originally the story was, at the time, I believe Sony pulled out because they decided to do the PlayStation. Maybe that's the rumor. Maybe it's the other way around. Nintendo pulled out, so Sony decided to do the PlayStation. Oh, the other thing they were mad about is Final Fantasy went from Nintendo to Sony. I have a lot of Nintendo fans who are still hot.
That's the one. That's the big one.
That's the big one, yeah. Still hot. Still hot about that. That's like being mad that somebody fucking dented your car 30 years ago.
From that Switch, from that fall.
Yeah, someone in high school, you had an argument with them, and you're regretting something you said 20 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, admittedly, sometimes I will sit up late at night and go, oh, probably shouldn't have said that. For like something I was in school where I was mean or whatever. I was like, yeah, it's probably not the right thing. This is all great conversation, man. I'm glad we did this because it's cool to hear your guys' takes on not only where you are with new consoles, but how you go about it and the double dipping or not double dipping, as well as
in all of this too. One of the most positive trends, I don't know about you, is how viable pre-builds are for computers, because it used to be pre-builds where you paid a hefty premium for them, and you also had all types of QA issues with how they, and you still have those today depending on where you get them, but I think because there's so much competition there, it's a lot easier for you to have a pretty high confidence that you're getting a good system and you have a lot of options, and they're usually pretty competitive comparing to like if you were to build it yourself.
And you can get RMAs on your own.
Yes.
I got RMAs on my own hardware just recently. Yeah. So
yeah. And dude, in fact, sometimes GPUs are only available through pre-builds.
Yeah, through
pre-builds.
Like
we had that with some of the most sought after GPUs, so it's pretty cool to see that flip, because it makes it a lot more accessible for people. Where it used to be a bit of gatekeeping, like, oh, if you want a PC, you have to learn how to build one, right?
Yeah. And I think that you and I had one of the best discussions we've ever had on the podcast about this, because I had built all my life and was paid to build PCs and was burned out on it. And you were getting into PCs, not getting into, but you were more into that. And we had the big discussion. It wasn't an argument. I want to make sure people point that out. But this is right when you first started this podcast, maybe even as a guest. But we talked about you were pro building, and I was definitely skewing more towards pro pre-built for a first and maybe your second being built by you because now companies do 48-hour burn tests. Almost all companies do that now. When you get a PC made, install Windows, burn it in, see if it works. And we had that back and forth of that. And neither one's right or wrong. It depends on the person and what they want to do. But it is cool that the option's there on both. It's also unfortunate that the failure rate is the same for either. Yeah, I mean, a pre-built system that's burned in and shipped to you, unless shipping fucked it up, will probably work. But I get RMAs when I build my own systems. It just happens. Hard drive, throw it in, SSD,
it does.
Just be like, just doesn't work, So you get these cool things.
Yeah, there are still parts of the pipeline that can fail and does often. You know, the shipping, something can get unhooked in the shipping, or, it wasn't correctly connected, or there's an issue with how they built it, and it passed QA accidentally. Stuff happens. But
dude, Johnny, I just got a parcel I ordered for Valentine's Day for my wife that quite literally looked like it had been drugged down the road on a rope behind the FedEx truck. Man, it got here and I was like, I've never seen, its edges were sheared off. It had scrape marks everywhere, like it got caught in like the conveyor belt, or like those videos you see, that you don't want to see of people getting caught in escalators.
It's like it has to be rough. That someone did violence to it deliberately.
Yeah, like somebody was karate chopping it in the back. They're mad at their boss, and they're like, yeah, awesome. I asked everybody what they were playing right now because I wanted to get a little bit of data on what people were jumping into, and it looks like Horizon Forbidden West, some people are playing. It looks like Persona 3 Reload, Baldur's Gate 3, Arma Reforger, awesome, very good person right there. I'm playing Hot Wheels World Race on GameCube. Damn, that's a blast from the past. Somebody else is playing GoldenEye. Oh no, they said GoldenEye started my online. I thought said they were playing it right now. Blue Blaze, Entropy Effect, Diablo, and that's about it for what people. I'm playing Dragon Infinite Wealth. And a Baldur's Gate, and Infinite Wealth, Elden Ring, Banishers,
some
AC Mirage.
It is cool to see. It is cool to see that the game is doing well, because I think it's it has a cool foundation. It is a bit repetitive, I agree with you, but there is something about it that is kind of entrancing. Going in, killing the bugs, the teamwork and stuff. So I'm happy it's like the reception has been pretty, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it is. As a longtime player of the first one, it is kind of nuts because the first one was like 7,000 concurrent players at most.
So that's crazy.
But
I think with that one
quite
too,
a difference.
Like, I'm gonna bitch. That's just what I will do. I will be mad at servers. I will be mad at companies not preparing themselves. I will be mad.
It's also fair.
But I will never, ever want a game to actually fail. I didn't like Death Stranding. I didn't want it to fail. Like and that's what happens. That's the next step a console warrior will have, or the next step somebody who needs to go outside will have. So with Helldivers 2 in particular, when I said it was repetitive, I do want to point something out. The very basis of a game has to have repetitiveness to show your improvement and your mastery. Sure. What my issue simply was that I felt that the repetitive cycle was already noticeable, or that I would notice it. I can tell in that game what was going on. Certainly nothing negative towards that game. And I would tell you, I don't think if I was playing it all the time, that wouldn't be worth $60. It would just be a more repetitive game than others. It offers less than Division, in how you interact and stuff, but it offers its own things. That's just the way it is.
I think there too.
I'm glad it's doing well. I want it to do better than well. I want it to do amazing. You know why? I want Sony to just do day and date on PC, so that
it's also just
move on
sort of
this fucking discussion.
Fun to just watch the journey Arrowhead's been on since they made Magica back in the day.
If you made Magica,
it was the same people.
Yeah.
Oh wow! That's a blast from
like that was also. I mean, that was also the top-down twin stick shooter, kind of with very heavy friendly fire elements. Just
I remember that.
And where you could mix and match spells together for like overpowered, really fun effects, which is one of the things I've always appreciated about Arrowhead is they've always put an emphasis on fun over balance a lot of the time.
Thank God. And can I got shit for this, and I'm going to say it again. I'm okay with a slightly broken game. I am okay with an unbalanced. I like the unbalanced part. That's what causes the juice in your brain to go, this is unbalanced. I got to figure this out. That's why a lot of times people will bitch about campers in a game, and a lot of times I'll go play that game because I'll be like, my job is to get that camper out of there. It's to make them rue that they ever camped there. And I like that. Unless there's something just broken. You know, we've seen in the finals, I think the heavies were really heavy, and I would have people playing lights in the finals, and they were bitching about heavies, and I was like, guys, I don't want to be a backseat driver here, but why don't you choose the fucking heavy then? And make them die as much as you. And they were like, nope, I refuse. And I'm like, okay, now that's sort of on you. You know, you're sort of not adjusting to what is being required. But I get it. Yeah, I agree. Dude, I'm glad. I'm glad it's doing well, man. And it sounds like people are really liking it. People want to jump in. And they have a good plan for their future coverage, too. They've done a little, not roadmap, but they've talked about that they want to continue to offer stuff that doesn't cost money.
It's changed now, so that now it's quite a bit more ambitious than what they had initially, given all their success, apparently.
Once they saw the success, you mean? They were like, okay, we got it.
They've also started hiring massively. They need as many coders as they can get to.
Oh, I did see that.
To adjust and adapt. Yeah.
Thanks for the DMs, super chats, guys. I will get to those in a second. Go ahead.
It's also kind of, for me, contrasted with what we see with Starbreeze and Payday 3, because Payday 3 had a kind of similar release, nowhere near as successful, but where it had a lot of trouble at release, where now they're looking to make substantial changes to it. And I mean, Payday 3, I think I saw like 700 players the other day, which is not good. So hopefully they can still rescue or salvage Payday 3, because I'm still kind of playing that game on occasion. It's still fun, but yeah, it definitely needs fixes.
So looking here on Twitter, I asked people to show some topics. Tristan said, I love the podcast, but it's hard listening to everybody misunderstand why console players don't want their first-party games on PC. It's not fanboys hoarding. It's not wanting first-party studios wasting time on hardware that wasn't part of your buy-in in the ecosystem. So I want to point out that, because I believe this was Absy and I also pointed out I thought pretty transparently, but maybe not, especially when Absy and I get going, we jump around really quick. Not only is it that usually port companies aren't the first-party company that is doing the port. That's the first thing. But the second thing is also that I actually had people tell me that was why. They just felt like they wanted everything on their thing. There wasn't a more thoughtful process of, oh, there's developer time going to another port. There's blah, blah, blah. It's when you do development, it's not always robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of stuff. It's not what it is. Sometimes the money is only put out because a port is coming. Quite literally, I've seen those documents where somebody's like, the port is coming. You will get extra money because the port is coming. So it actually maybe even gives them more because they feel that they can make the original game really good so that when they do the port, there's even more in the port. So I get the complaint, but then I did state that, and he said, when we listened to it, we heard that, and we're randomly running around the house when we do it. But I appreciate it.
Absolutely correct that it's commonly outsourced. I mean, there are entire studios that basically specialize in doing ports.
And Sony bought their own on purpose for this.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and often it's a follow-up project. You know, like we see the game comes out, and then a year or two later, it's ported so that it didn't slow down the original development.
Right. Not only that, the original game may not be selling as hot, and it may not have any growth left or any true players left, which is what Phil had stated about Xbox. The next one was Tipsy Tater Tot. What single-player games being patched months, sometimes years later after release? Oh, he says with single-player games being patched months. How long do you suggest waiting to play a new single-player game to get the best experience?
Depends entirely.
It depends entirely on the single-player game, right? And the amount of bugs.
Because if we're talking open world,
maybe
stuff,
wait longer,
where you have a lot of variables there, so a lot of potential for bugs and stuff. I think maybe wait a couple of months or whatever could be a safe bet. But if you're talking like just a point-and-click adventure or something, I would be much more comfortable going at
day one, even, or at release. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Johnny, do you have any different thoughts on that for like wait time for a single-player game to get the safest experience?
I'm just curious if there is a big new single player game, I want to experience it when it comes out. I wouldn't trade having a more polished experience for losing the train in a way. Yeah, there is a communal aspect of we're all experiencing the game. We can talk about it here. I would kind of lose on all of that. Yeah. And not only that, but it probably gets spoiled about like half of...
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that. Spoiled, for sure, can pop up.
Because nowadays, it's really difficult. I mean, I've had to mute like 25 different words on Twitter just to not get spoiled about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And it's only the demo out right now, so...
Damn. Yeah, spoiling is a good point. Kenneth says, do you guys think with the success seen by Sony on Helldivers 2, they will launch more live service games? More than the 12 that they are cornerstoning their entire economy on? I don't know. But I think that all Helldivers 2 does is show them what they need to fix and that success is available. So to me, this is a good litmus test of...
And sort of, it's reinforced their strategy, I think.
Yeah, if anything, right? And I'm sure it's caused them to say, what do we need to do? But I would say, yeah, it's reinforced that success is possible. I mean, very possible. Yeah. And Helldivers 2 is a big game, but not as big as, I'm sure some of these service games that are coming are. Brian says, Hector Rodriguez, Scump lawsuit versus Activision for monopolistic businesses in regards to Call of Duty League. Brian, I'm sorry, I do not have the time to look that up, but I will on the next podcast and check that out. I do not know about that lawsuit. And with lawsuit stuff, now I really want to make sure I read a little bit and pop around. Christopher says, with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming out at the end of the month, what remake of another Final Fantasy? What remake of another Final Fantasy game would you guys like to have? Is there any other Final Fantasy deep in your back pocket you'd like to see remade?
Yeah, and it's not even close. It's Final Fantasy IX.
Gotcha. Why? Just your favorite Final Fantasy?
But let's put it this way: 10 is already like pretty good, such that, in my opinion, doesn't need a remake. Fair. 9 would be so transformative, and it's also like maybe the second or third best Final Fantasy, for a lot of people. So that I think that's just would be a very clear.
I feel like 9 is one of those that holds up the well. The well. I can't speak anymore.
It holds up pretty well.
The best in terms of its visual, that whole storybook sort of
presentation
visual style they went for, and with 9.
I came back to it recently. And it does, but like the cutscenes don't have.
Right. Yeah,
audio.
That's true.
Like they don't have voices.
Right. Interesting. That's a good point. Voice.
It's back in the day where big ad. Cutscenes weren't really possible. It was super like vanguard
or basic.
To even. Yeah, it was super like ahead of the curve to even do a cutscene.
Yeah.
So I just think like it would be a really transformative. Like you could
that's true.
Expand and show the game in a completely different way.
Dude,
and I also I have a soft spot for the story of that game specifically as well.
I don't love all Final Fantasies. I'm not a huge Final Fantasy fan. I always call it because I never get the number right. I like the one with Gambits. And
yeah, that's 12.
I dig the Gambits idea. It needs to be in every game. But I would say overall, I don't require any of them to be remade. I think Final Fantasies have usually pushed to the graphical limit. So when we get too far back, I can't remember them because I wasn't a Final Fantasy fan.
Yeah,
So the ones I've played and liked are the ones that look pretty good on their own.
They already look pretty good.
Yeah, pretty solid.
And dude, I think the Gambits thing is being slapped on. I would love to see it even in like Dragon's Dogma. I know maybe this is heresy because it's a bit like against the grain, but if I could
suggest to them to do stuff.
Suggest or like give them some algorithms.
Yes.
Give my pawns like, okay, how I want you to behave in the fight. And it's like, when I drop below 200 HP, give me a potion. When there's an enemy that's weak to fire, use your fire spell. This type of stuff.
And I think we'll see that in Dragon's Dogma. I mean, at minimum behind the scenes. And remember, you could originally talk to your pawn and tell him to do a couple things slightly different.
That's
true.
Think
that'll come.
Yeah.
I think that'll come. Silver, do you have any before I move on to the next? Do you have a Final Fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, mine would probably actually be one that's already been remade. It was remade into a 3D version, which is Final Fantasy IV.
Oh, damn!
And I didn't really like the 3D version at all because it basically was the visual aesthetic kind of a Final Fantasy VII. That whole blocky 3D kind of thing that I really didn't like. Where I much preferred the old 2D sprites of 4. But I think like 4 is just, to me, one of the most interesting Final Fantasy games because its protagonist is actually like a mature adult, which is
mature
is quite...
adult Final Fantasy character, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Like you're a veteran soldier commander, Cecil, who's the protagonist.
Imagine not being a bratty kid.
Not being a bratty
kid. Spiky hair teenager.
Yeah.
So I think that could be interesting. Also, like the overall themes of the game and stuff are around war and stuff are pretty interesting in how they're handled.
All right. Well, and that I hadn't even thought about that, but I like being an adult in one. That would be great. Ransom says, "What's your favorite game mechanics from different Souls-likes or Metroidvanias? Are there any you would combine or change for a new game?" Well, let's not go too deep into this woods because this could take forever. But is there a mechanic for a roguelike or a mechanic in a Dark Souls-like that you particularly like and would like to see, continue forward into other ones? For me, I think they're so different. I have a hard time picking something.
They are, yeah. I mean, one like element of Metroidvania that I think would be cool in a Souls is if you can unlock flying, for example. So let's say you play most of your game without the ability to fly,
right.
And then at some point maybe you ascend, and you
or you get a jetpack.
Now you can traverse,
bro.
Yeah, now you can traverse areas, and you have access to all the verticality.
Awesome. Dude,
that's almost like
it would change the world feel. Yeah, fire immunity.
Yeah.
So you drop into the fire, miss a jump, and you're like, "Bitch, this ain't touching me."
Because now the loot you saw on the roof last time, guess what? You can go and take it. You know what I mean? That type of stuff.
Dude, I dig that idea, man. I love the idea of changing up a Metroid. Imagine playing a Metroidvania and like that entire. And by the way, I'm sure somebody in chat. I'm not looking. I bet you somebody's done this. What we're talking about, but
Metroid did it.
Okay, well, Metroid did it.
Back in the day.
There you go. So the original. So I want to see it more. I love that idea, man. That is a phenomenal idea. I'll just go with that because I don't track. I mean, there's some things I really like. One of the ones, there was a indie Metroidvania that allowed you to stop and reverse time for the enemies. And so you could like put the enemy at the edge so you could jump over him versus getting hit by his sword when you try to jump. That kind of weird shit. I like that idea. Next up.
Yeah,
Dylan, what's up, Dylan? Dylan, always on Twitter, always asking questions. I appreciate you, man. What do you and the crew think will be the next big splash in technology that advances games big and small?
Oh, games specifically?
Big splash in games that will advance games big and small.
Huh.
I mean, potentially, I guess. Depending on what they do with it, it could be handheld.
True, right? Yeah.
We could maybe see
battery tech. Maybe
I think we could see a handheld renaissance, the likes of which we saw when the Game Boy initially came out in the 80s. I think, depending on what they do with these handheld consoles.
Yeah. That's a very good point. I mean, it feels like we're almost there. It feels like price and battery life are like VR feels the same way. There's two things in VR.
I think the big mistake they make in handheld gaming to me for today is trying to, maximize it and trying to make it almost like a miniature sort of console and what it can do technically or whatnot, where I don't even think they need to go that high, where they could just do something that can like fit it, something pocket-sized or whatever, that can just play a lot of different sort of maybe smaller indie games or whatever it is. I think a lot of people would respond to that and also it would also be more accessible on a price level where a lot of people could participate and buy in.
Yeah, because no matter what anybody wants to say, including myself, the cheapest Chinese knockoff is still $199 for an okay handheld. You know what I mean? You're still in that $200 So what could you get in a $79 one? You know, what would it look like? What kind, even if it just is your very basic 1-2 buttons on the front, like what could you see? That's a good point. Do you have any, Johnny? Tech?
I mean, I think it's using, maybe this is controversial, but I think it's using AI for different things. Like, for example, in JRPGs where you don't have voice acting, what if now we can have some voice acting? And I know that, you know, this is controversial because you know, people say it might take away jobs from people, but think about it this way, right? We are technically limited with what we can do with our voices because we're human and we can only do so many things. But with AI, it would be possible for you to say, like, now do it in the voice of, you know, a demon, or, and of course we have filters for that kind of stuff, but it just sort of opens up some stuff, you know, like we're talking about the AI generated video that popped up, I think today or yesterday. And like some of that stuff blows my mind because it's like, show me, you know, a person reading a book on a cloud, and, you know, it does it in a convincing way. That kind of blows my mind because it's putting, you know, image to stuff that before was just in our imaginations. And, you know, we can do that stuff with games, but voices, we're still, of course, limited to what we can do. And maybe there is some space to like complement, you know, you have a voice cast of people, but you kind of complement it with other voices from AI. Maybe if you don't have the budget for a fully voiced, but you can say, we're going to get some talent, but then we're also going to, you know, have some diverse voices coming from AI, that type of stuff.
So my answer was going to be AI, but I sort of felt that was too big of an answer because I think AI is the biggest answer.
It is.
So I'll go with another one, but I will agree with you. And I will also state that I understand where people are worried, so they want to crush it. But there are people who want some voice for a couple paragraphs or want some cutscenes, and it just, the amount of pay, there isn't that financially in there. So you have a difference between nothing and an AI voice. And especially as AI voices are getting better, you have better AI voice. I just don't have any issue whatsoever with doing that. What I don't like is, of course, replacing a spoken part where you are planning on that, but you've chosen to do AI. But I absolutely do not want to crush some random company or random guy in his basement who wants to make a game that is competitive and can't do voice at all, or can do a cool artificial voice. By the way, artificial voices were used right up until Sega CD and the CD systems came out, when they started not using synthesizers and digitalized, you know, fake voices, and created and used Redbook audio and started using audio. So it's been done before. We're just now using AI, and people are nervous about it stealing voices. I get that. But also there are people out there who have no issue saying, I would love to voice your game, but I'm not very great at emoting. But you like my voice timbre? You like the way I sound? I have no issue saying, I'll do a recording for you, and you take that and adjust it and put it in your game. Put their name in the credits. That's great. Put their BI like AI voice avatar built on KARAK. Great. No issue whatsoever.
And then you have someone like Frank Welker who can voice pretty much anything.
Or Robin Williams, who was able to do stuff. Or is that the guy from Police Academy? Or is it not him? The black guy from Police Academy that can do car sirens and...
Welker is like one of the most famous voice actors in the animated industry because he can voice any animal, any bestial sound, or whatever
and you should go for that.
You should go for that. He can provide that.
So there's that. There's AI in everything. So I'm not going to go with AI, but AI is obviously it. Like it's very hard to even say it's not that, because AI can fix compression algorithms. It can fix audio that's recorded poorly. Valhalla, I'm talking to you. It can fix all that shit. But if we're talking outside of that, my personal opinion would be that, because I know the next question on Twitter, which locks us into a weird goalpost here that's going to move. I would say accessibility options as a whole. will get better to where they're not just set up for people who have a eye issue, where they don't see all colors. They're colorblind to things. That it's not just hearing impaired, but that the accessibility is adjusted and won't just be AI. People are doing this already without AI. They're, the new controllers, all that kind of stuff. I can see a time where somehow, no, I can't. Not without AI, because it would require AI to do what I'm saying. AI. That's the answer.
It's in there. Yeah.
It's in there. Next question is goalposts. Did I lose? Pluto Boy says, when do you think we'll hit the point of diminishing returns for hardware? Will it no longer be worth it for game developers to improve graphics anymore? The reason why I say this is sort of a goalpost shift is that with AI, things will change that we're not even aware of. Like, things will become possible. But I also think that we're past that point for most games.
Yeah, for me, we passed it nearly 10 years ago.
Right, because we're really looking at, you can do real-looking people in FMV and adjust that, or you can do highly rendered. I guess your next step would be a person who looks absolutely real, but then you jump into what Johnny just said, which is yesterday, OpenAI showed video of their new AI video generator, and while there are some mistakes, there are many times where it looks absolutely real. So, and that's AI, right? So it's like, it's hard to get it. We're already at the point where most games, as long as they look good and perform good, I'm not saying I need to see more. Ray tracing, I guess, would be one, but I like a lot of games without ray tracing because artistically they are.
Right.
I don't, here's the thing, guys, that always stuns me. People are like, oh, when are we going to get realistic looking people, blah, blah, blah. And then I look at an oil painting and I'm like, that oil painting looks better than any supermodel in the world. And that oil painting was done fucking, 3 centuries ago. So it's just all about artistry and what you put on the screen. The best actors in the world can make a shitty movie. So just because the characters are going to look realistic like me, you're not going to want to see me with all my blemishes and my fucking curly beard hair, right? You'll get an immaculate person.
The high definition transition wasn't kind to everyone, right?
Oh, you know what I say, man? Porn is not HD ready.
I was gonna bring it up.
Porn is not HD ready, bro. If there's anything in the world that is not HDR or HD ready, it's naked people, man. Yeah, this is a good point. So we'll move on from there, and we'll go to. We talked about the refresh. Grim asks one of the most important questions, and I want to say how much I appreciate this. This is a thoughtful question, and it's definitely something that we don't discuss here that needs to be, and that's Skittles or M&Ms.
Oh, Skittles, 100%.
Same,
dude.
Same, and you're an anarchist if you say M&Ms. Go ahead.
The sour ones.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, Skittles.
Because the thing is, right, I don't buy them that often because I would eat them like all day, literally, if I had them. But when I buy them, I buy one of each fucking flavor. There's like the normal, there's the sour, and like a few others.
Come on, chat. Skittles or M&Ms?
Time,
go ahead, sorry.
The moment I eat the sour, the others seem like shit.
They pale. They pale.
They have so much flavor packed in. They make my tongue go
your gland. You can hear your glands go.
But I keep. I can't have too many of them.
Neospark, when he came on the podcast, we were talking about those Sour Patch things that I was eating, and I burned the side of my mouth on the sole, and I was in pain, going, "Oh my god!" And stuff like Homer Simpson, just going, "These are delicious." Yes, it was ridiculous, and I'm not saying people should follow that. But
no, definitely don't.
I would assume you're the same in some way, Silver, just because M&M chocolate is not great anyway. But I don't know. Or do you like sour things like Skittles? Or you?
I have never had Skittles, but I did. I don't eat sour things, sour candy as much now. But certainly as a kid and young man, I really enjoyed sort of sour
lemon heads or something.
Like strips.
Yeah,
of sour.
Strips.
Yeah, with sugar on them and stuff. Yeah.
Dude, they hype me up. When I have them, I actually get like workout energy. So sometimes we'll have like Sour Patch Kids, and you're just like, "Oh, fuck, let's do this."
That's so your secret for working out so much.
It is just 3:30 a.m. A little handful of some Skittles. So looking in chat, sour M&Ms. Oh my god! Whoa, that was a bad answer. Skittles. Kel says I'm eating M&Ms right now, but that doesn't answer the question. Kel, I mean, I'll eat like a really bad steak. It doesn't mean I want a good one. Come on. M&M's by a long shot. It's not close. This is the third turd. Name checks out. M&M's, baby. Skittles are the worst, Carrie says.
We have a kind of I don't know if they're a European version of M&M's, but like Smarties, as sort of that version. I think they're a little larger than M&M's.
M&M's always taste really bland to me. So, and I like the taste. That's why I don't like tea.
Yeah, they are. They don't have.
They are nice. It's not like
flavor.
Yeah, it's not like I would say no to some M&M's. It's more like it doesn't get me excited.
Kel said he hates Skittles. Get out! You're out. Objection. Okay,
Someone said dates are their snack. That just makes me sad. That like, there's something about like if dates are your exciting snack.
How bland is your life if dates are your...
I'm joking.
Maybe he means dates. Maybe he means he goes out on a lot of dates, and that's what he's talking about.
That's his snack. He's just...
My grandfather was very fond of prunes.
Prunes, dude. My mom, if I ask her, so we both eat lemons with salt. That's our main thing. But my mom loves grapes and prunes, and she would eat, prunes don't take much before your stomach starts going... We had a prune tree.
I was gonna bring that up.
Dude,
it's bad. I can smell a prune.
Yeah,
and I'm going to the toilet.
And you're already going to the bathroom, dude. So we have a prune tree. My old place in Toledo, we had a couple acres, and at the far end we had a prune tree. And whenever that came up, man, you'd wait a little bit, and my mom would always say, "It's not ready yet. They're not ready." And you're a kid going, "Are they ready now?" And she's like, "It's 2 hours later. It takes days for these to be ready." I'm like, "What about now?" And you'd go out there and you'd eat those green. We had a green apple tree as well. You'd eat the green apples, and you'd eat prunes. And your friends would be over going, I gotta go home. You're like, "Why?" And they're like, I just don't feel good. I gotta go. But we would sit out there and just eat prunes for hours. So, well, hey, healthy bowels, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Making sure you're pushing that shit through.
Getting that fiber.
That's a great question. Grim wins for question of the day. Pedro says, there's one thing I'd like people to talk about. With all the recent discussions over unsustainable business models, $70 being too cheap, next-gen games going up to $100, what about us outside first world countries? We'll just be locked out of game. No one cares? No, I think everybody cares. You guys are technically sometimes more expensive than we are. Reg, way more expensive. Australians, their games can rise in price.
They get shafted all the time, right? Australia.
Yeah. It's not that no one cares. It's that we all, in fact, know that. It's just, I don't know. I mean, that's what sucks about living in a penal colony.
I mean, really, really often they take the same number of the
price. I was hoping
price.
Somebody get that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Johnny. They just changed
the currency.
Yeah, that's what you wished, right? Steam, remember when Steam let you do that? In the old days, Steam would let you buy from other stores. I mean, they probably still do, but I remember Red was talking about buy a Russian game,
For us, it sucks because it's still 70, but it's 70 pounds, which is worth more than dollars. So, it depends, but mostly we're all getting shafted.
And it also depends on how big because I think we can all agree Australia and New Zealand are shafted. They get games 10 hours earlier if it's digital many times, but that's the
one. Yeah, that's true.
That's the one positive, I guess. But
that's the deal. Dude, it's like your prices are gonna suck, dude.
The sun passes you first, bitch. You gotta pay sun tax. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, their prices are fairly equivalent to ours. So.
Oh, are they? Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So technically a small sun tax. So sorry.
I think they just complain a lot. I keep hearing Aussies complain about their prices.
Yeah, and I think
they're higher in relation to like U.S. prices and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're higher than Russian prices. I mean, it's the way it is. I think as a whole, they're talking about all combined. But I absolutely do get it. And I don't think anybody doesn't care. We do care. It's a known thing. But I don't know what that fix is. But don't worry. We talk about what you are talking about all the time on this podcast because we're that's why it was called International Podcast. We do see that. Skabom says, do you think developers are in a weird position with trends as they currently exist? Subnautica 2 got dragged online for being called a live service MP game, and then Helldivers launched, and everyone wants more games like it. So remember, Subnautica came out and basically stated they used the wrong term.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a single-player game that will allow multiplayer optionally.
By the way, if you listen to my video as of about 2 weeks ago, where I talk about some of this, I state that very clearly you will see people going away from those titles, and they're going to use any other title they can get away with. Evolving Worlds, Revolution, evolution. There's going to be, evolving game, continued opportunities. They're gonna PC their way out of it, but they'll be service games. And yeah, I think Subnautica screwed up. Those guys used the wrong term. So that's a snafu, right? That's a PR snafu. They use the wrong term and a term that doesn't apply to them. I do believe what he really wanted to mention was Suicide Squad. Because Suicide Squad got a lot of heat for that, even though they tried to change the words around and then Helldivers didn't. Here's the thing, guys. Suicide Squad had 1,000 things going against it that were not real, and 1,000 things going against it that were real. Helldivers 2 had a bunch of going against it and a bunch going for it, and it has come out on top because it works. So I think it's a more longer-term game. I think that people will probably play it longer-term, and that overall it appears the gameplay loops are less repetitive, noticeably less repetitive in Helldivers than they are in Suicide Squad. And so the people just think the return is better on that. But I will tell you this, you'll hear me bitching about service games, and then you'll hear me saying I love Division. When I say I hate service games, I should be very clear. What I mean is the ones that misuse the service part. Also, a single-player game that makes you log in, or a fucking disc that comes to your house and you put it in, it says connect to the internet to download your game, fuck those guys. Those guys that's ridiculous. Those whatever they should be called lack of service, because that's really what they are. They aren't giving you the service you're paying for. I'm paying for a physical game. That motherfucking game better be on that disc.
Like when I have to spend 7 hours installing Microsoft Flight Simulator and it's crappy PC installer.
And it's crappy PC installer. So I think those terms will be changing, but
man.
Yeah, it sucks. DV says, I would love your opinion on gamers avoiding I would love your opinion on gamers avoiding to buy fully priced AA games. We both adore Banishers, yet despite the critical acclaim, I've seen many comments, I'll wait for a sale, this is not worth $60. Are gamers judging games based on their budgets? Yes.
Yes.
And they're based on a huge influx of games, right? That is becoming more important if 5 games are $60 and one game looks amazing and plays amazing and the other plays amazing but maybe doesn't look as amazing. Right?
Yeah, I mean there's so much perception of value around that $60 sort of price tag. I mean, you saw it even back with like Sony's The Order, right? Which was a $60 game that was very, very much AAA in terms of presentation and whatnot, but where people didn't feel there was enough content there to merit that price tag.
By the way, also, Silver, I think we could point this out, that if somebody has Banishers and then they had a cyberpunk version of Banishers, it would also depend on if you like fantasy or cyberpunk.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge thing when it comes to books, when it comes to movies. I like cyberpunk movies more than I like fantasy movies now, when I used to like fantasy. You know what I mean? The theme changes. The theme matters, too. Like, some people may not be doing Banishers because it's a Scotsman and a woman banishing ghosts.
Doesn't speak to them.
It doesn't speak to them at a $60 level.
The point I speak to, I think it's true that the entire discussion around value in games has been warped for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And time in games. Time.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the short time, but when you start hearing what was it? Remember Dying Light? 500 hours. And I did a video called 500 hours of fucking what? Like, what does that even mean? 500 hours of what? Valhalla had a ton. Is it better than Origins? No. You know what I mean?
Tetris has given me over $10,000.
Tetris has given you over. Does that mean you need to pay them $2,000 for it? You know what I mean? Yeah, time. Yeah. I love discussing money because that's what I'm doing and that's where I base things. But that's also why I will say a AA game is still worth $60 because my $60 is spent. I can't speak for people who don't buy the games, but I can tell you when I spend $60 on something, I'm going to say whether it's worth that $60. But I'm also going to bring up all the reasons why I think it is. And a person who is wanting to save money should not just be looking at a Metacritic score. They should. That is ridiculous. And you should not just be looking at time in a game, because Silver's played games that I've played, and it's taken him twice as long. Absy, 3 times as long. Then I'll play a game 3 times as long for me than Absy and Silver. The how you interact, what you find. I know people who do not like the island building in Yakuza. their game time is going to be dramatically reduced than Johnny's or Reg's. Dramatically
15
reduced.
hours long.
Yeah. So here's what I would say. Worry about the price for sure and what people say, but really you need to inform yourself as a gamer unless you don't care about the money. And that's also okay. I think it is fine to say that one person has their $60, that frivolous thing that they want to get is just, it's less important to them than it might be to somebody else. And that's fine. That's fine.
At the end of the day, you just have to ask yourself, do you think this price is fair?
Exactly. Do you think what you've heard and seen about the game is fair for you? It's fair for me, and maybe you align with me. If you don't, you can quite easily say, Jeremy has a tendency to say this $60 game is not worth it, where I think it is. Great. From now on, when I say something's not worth it, you might think it is. And you can adjust slightly. Same thing if somebody says a game is a 7 and you've been following for a while and you're like, you know what? Most of the games they say are a 7 or an 8 or a 9 to me. Great. You have to adjust. The world's flexible. Like, educate yourself. I mean, it seems like that's the answer.
I think so many of those issues come because people don't have the right expectations. They don't know enough about the game, so they jump in with all these preconceived notions. I think this hurt Suicide Squad a lot because incredibly, a lot of people still thought it was a game in the style of the other Arkham games, despite them saying it wasn't and all that. And then understandably, they were disappointed because they wanted A and they got B, right?
Right.
So it's like the game never had a chance, regardless of if you like it for what it is or no. I think that it got affected a lot by that. At least looking at reviews, anecdotally, you see so many of those.
I just think it's all about, when I say, this is why I don't do timestamps on reviews. And guys, listen, if I do a timestamp on a review, it's certainly not going to be a great breakdown either. One of the reasons why is because, and I'm not saying I'm different, other people do this, but not everybody does. So the people that do it my way have a tendency to not do timestamps. When I talk about music, I'm talking about fun. And when I'm talking about sound, I'm talking about gameplay.
It all ties
and when I'm
together.
talking, it all ties together. And you can't just go buy. Okay, buy.
Extricate one thing from the others.
You have to extract it as the entire situation. And I'm going to tell you guys, me personally, if I'm spending $60, I'm listening to a full review. If I'm going to buy a game and I didn't review it, because it's $60. If somebody says I'm buying it just because it got an 8. Then my assumption is that money comes easier to them, or they value whatever they are seeing, and they don't feel the need. I personally feel that there is a need, but everybody's different. Patience serves well. Yeah. That's a very good question, though, man, and I absolutely appreciate it. Who asked that? This was DV. That's a very good question. I appreciate it. I said that twice. Ravi says, not sure if this has been asked already, but do you guys think with the recent failures of massive budget games like Anthem, Suicide Squad, Forspoken, Redfall, etc., will we see big studios moving towards smaller, more creative projects? Yes and no. Right? Isn't that going to be the answer?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes
and no.
I mean, we already kind of saw that with Pentiment, where that was
Guardians of the Galaxy was technically smaller than a lot of the prior games from those guys. It's a more tighter process.
Prince of Persia, right?
Prince of Persia, yeah. And then some will do a big game and hope that the big game has the budget and the gets good props and it works. Johan,
one quick thing. We give a lot of shit, but I think there's some wisdom in that. The people creating games, they understand that what matters is if it's a good game. So it's not that people don't want service games, even though they have some bad baggage attached to them from many, many bad service games. But it's like, is it a good service game?
Yeah.
If it is, it can be amazing, right? I mean, we're seeing
justify its nature as a service game or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's not like, does it have to be open world? Does it have to be MMO? Does it have to be service? Does it have to be not service? I think that's the wrong question. It's focusing on the game itself.
I think that that dynamic is very similar to what happened when all games started to transition into open world. they kind of became open world for the sake of becoming
being open world. Yeah,
whether or
absolutely.
not it felt inherent felt natural as an inherent part of the game or not.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about that comment.
Where you're trying to force that
for sure
system onto the game where maybe it doesn't fit.
And can I piss on another game? I just said it earlier, but I'm sorry. I'm going to die on this hill. Star Wars, The Fallen Order, and Star Wars Survivor went Dark Souls and didn't need to. They didn't. Nothing was added. And that is the Dark Souls we've seen. Metroidvanias, all these genres, open world. Not everything needs to be it, but they see the cool, hot word, and they think, let's do it. And they don't need to. Some of these companies can remove some of this stuff, spend the money on something else, or save your budget and do what Alan Wake did and sell yourself $10 cheaper.
And even as someone who likes those games a lot, I feel like the bonfire stuff literally could be just removed from the game.
Exactly.
And it would be a better game.
Yep. And I absolutely agree that not only would it be a better game, but I would like it. It would remove a negative for me. So for you, it's not a negative. For you, it's there, and if it was removed, it would be a positive, but it's not dragging it down. For me, it's dragging it down,
and
both
I know
fictionally
Abzi also
and gameplay. And Abzi,
similarly.
Yeah. But it's great, Johnny, because that's the other thing. When somebody's doing a review, you go out there and you watch a game spot review. If they're covering it and they say this, and they talk about it, that's up to the gamer to decide, does that add or does that subtract? Or does it sound like it adds? This person says it subtracts for this reason. So as long as there's context, you're good to go. Yeah, that's good questions from everybody in Twitter. Last one is, which is the best turtle and why? I think he means Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Donatello's
why?
What weapon?
The bow staff.
Yeah, that's a pretty good.
He's the inventor, the nerd. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the stick guy. I always liked Raffaello with the forks. The
sai? Oh, really? Yeah. I was not a Teenage Mutant Ninja fan, but I'll probably go with the bow staff as well.
Honestly, I don't remember much about their personalities.
Either do I. I don't even remember who has what weapon.
Michelangelo was the beach bum surfer dude. Raphael was the angry one. Leonardo was the leader. Donatello was the nerd,
goofy nerd,
brainy guy.
Oh,
Johan says, what time period in history do you wish was covered more in games? What time span in history do you wish were covered more in games?
Oh, there are so many, man.
I like primal stuff, and I would say cyberpunk right now, futuristic.
Like full-on cave time stuff.
I do like cave time stuff. Yeah, I do like the idea of I just like caveman stuff. Super chat from Dead Space Martyr, $20. Y'all rock and have made my motorcycle ride today great. Keep it up. Thank you very much. Be safe.
Thank you.
Don't crank it. You got to hear the traffic around you. Yeah, primal kind of stuff. I love that. Caveman, World War I, though it's covered a lot. But there are a lot
of fronts on World War I that haven't been covered.
True, that haven't been covered. Yeah.
Same thing with World War II, honestly. Even as much as people have made World War II stuff, there's still so many fronts on that haven't been covered, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on from there, let's talk about some topics because we still have more. Embracer Group canceled 29 games, guys. Embracer Group canceled 29 between July and December. And have more cancels coming. More cancellations? No, cancellations. I tried to add some letters in there. Coming. With Embracer Group, I don't know if there's much more to say other than that they sort of led the pack and things were going bad in the gaming industry and it just got worse. I mean, it sucks.
Damn. Yeah, that's escalating.
Yeah. Man, I mean, there's nothing really even to say that I know of, unless you guys have something to add. It's just that's the current news from just Embracer. Element,
this is like ultra copium or like,
here we go.
Trying to see the silver lining.
Here we go.
It's like survival of the fittest. We're only seeing the best projects survive the scrutiny because they're having to shut down so many for cash reasons.
No. Johnny.
Not even a little bit.
That's an all natty rock question all of a sudden.
Is the rock all natty?
So survival of the fittest, they're not even made so you can't tell what's fittest, right? Number one. But number two,
they're in the room when they're being like
right. Survival of the fittest. Fittest doesn't mean what staff numbers. They might have fired ones with smaller staff, which might have been better games. Bigger staff that might have been better games. No, survival of the fittest is not. We'll see survival of the most flexible. We will certainly see flexibility. Guys, Square, Namco, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. I don't know why I have to keep repeating this whenever I hear somebody talk about this stuff. The biggest companies in the world in the last 3 months have legitimately stated they are changing their business practices in bigger ways than have ever occurred prior. If that's not an indication of not survival of the fittest, it's people changing before the apocalypse. What is? How many times, if you're in the hot water or if you're in cold water and you're in the fucking pan and you see somebody turn on the heat, at what point do you realize you're going to get boiled? Like, people need to prepare themselves. They're not the only companies talking about this. At all. No, Capcom is not laying people off. What they aren't doing is building other teams. There's a couple where they're just sort of sitting status quo. That's the other thing. Some growth that we expect won't also happen. So you won't hear about those, but teams are, like me, let's say I get to a big point and I'm like, I'm going to hire an editor. That's different than, or that's sort of what I'm saying here. That's sort of different than me saying, I'm going to grab Johnny and he's going to review games on my channel. They're two different kinds of things. One's more behind the scenes, one's more front facing. But
I think there's also the obvious dynamic that if you're a publisher looking at various things you have in production pipeline, you're not looking at quality so much as you're looking at potential profitability. Is there any money here? And profitability doesn't necessarily have any causal link to quality. Yeah,
it's so there's no getting around it, right? We've seen seen Anthem. If all of it's like all of these big. We've seen tons of big games fail, tons of small games fail.
I mean, Skull and Bones.
Skull and Bones,
Quad A.
Yeah, I saw. I mean,
talk about somebody saying something they shouldn't.
But I saw it have a huge issue where apparently at launch, like there's like a radial quest or whatever that you can get in a port that will where you have to take goods and to another port, and then it'll spawn like enemy ships. But then it spawns the enemy ships as you're in port, and these enemy ships also attack other players. So if you're like level 10, it'll spawn level 10 ships outside a port, and then these level 10 ships will attack and sink level 2 players who just come into the game. So
damn, son. That's a big
there's
miss.
This massive impediment there for new players experiencing the game.
And there's griefers at level 20 doing it, right?
Yeah,
know it.
Who are going, and I'm just going to camp AFK here while all these things because as long as the player is there and isn't going on the mission and going away or logging out, the enemy ships will keep spawning infinitely.
So let's talk about Capcom. I was talking about them changing some of their ideas and doing different stuff. They announced that they are doing a price rejigger on Dragon's Dogma and looking at what to sell it at. So let me read this. This is from IGN. So this speaks directly to somebody who said they didn't think that Capcom was changing stuff or didn't say they were cutting. They are making other changes. Dragon's Dogma 2 is the first Capcom game priced at $70, but it sounds like there's more to come. In a financial results conference call QA summary, Capcom responded to a question about the company's video game price policy and pointed that $70 had become the norm. And the quote is, Dragon's Dogma 2, which is scheduled for release this fiscal year, will be priced at $69. Capcom replied, industry-wide development costs are rising, and we are considering a price review as one option. Ultimately, we will intend to take a thoughtful approach in pricing our games while ascertaining user feedback. So even they are looking at raising prices.
Become the norm. It's become the norm on PlayStation. It hasn't really become like the norm on Steam or.
So I misspoke when I said they're making they're doing a price review after, not on Dragon's Dogma, but it indicates quite quickly that we're seeing companies adjusting their prices, adjusting how they do things. And this is something that Phil said during the Xbox interview, where he said you can look at your current user base and you can try to get more money from them. Microtransactions, some kind of grift. He didn't say grift, I'm just saying grift. Or you can find more fans. And with game developers, even though Microsoft's one, they're looking at prices, smaller teams, not doing as many games, doing longer-term games. We've seen all these mentioned. And it's huge changes, guys. I mean, $70 is a big change. When did we first see $70 become? That was Sony, right? Sony was one of the first.
That was Sony marking that up for
one of their
PS5
AAA games, I'm assuming, like one of their bigger. Oh, for PS5 games, is that how they did it?
Yes.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I think Ratchet and Clank, I think, was maybe the first one.
Was it? Oh, okay. More questions real quick. Antonio, what are your thoughts on what Spencer said? I think we've talked about that. Scarlett says, hi, ACG, got a question for the panel. What's your favorite Yakuza game? I think we talked about that as well a little bit. I think right now we're saying Judgment or this new one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel's just saying that they played Dragon's Dogma after I raved on it and love it, but it is a little bit rough. And then Keeney says, do you think expensive flops like Immortals, Atlas Fallen, Forspoken, and Babylon's Fall will cause a major shift from single-player games? No. Nope. Single-player games are not dead. They were never dying. In fact, it was the dumbest goddamn thing I ever heard, man. Right?
Yeah, it was exactly like the PC gaming is dead from the 2000s.
Yeah. Oh, my God, I forgot all about that. And, we do see a genre coming out of or going into hibernation and coming out. I think we can say RTS for a while, turn-based for a while. They come in and out.
Absolutely.
First-person shooters for a while, I noticed it was going to third-person a lot. People were liking that ability to look around, more flexible camera use, and then,
true. You see the battle royales, roguelites, Souls, all this stuff.
And then you're seeing a lot of them adding viewpoints, I've noticed. There's been games where they're patching in viewpoints later, where they're like, okay, now you can go first-person like World War Z. World War Z started out third-person. And then months later, they patched in third person. Yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2 had both, right? But it was from the original, they only had third person. Yeah,
original was third, and then on the PC release, it was
Yeah, man, here we go. Let's talk about good stuff. Let's move to good stuff. Sojourner says, if you could take any video game item to use in real life, what would it be? Weapons, armor, vehicles, powers. So what if you could create out of the atoms of the universe one item from a game? And we'll say not use, like we're not going to go kill a bunch of people. But you could grab one item from a game. What would you use? I already know my answer.
That's such a good question.
I know mine, without a doubt. The Normandy from Mass Effect. I want to go to other galaxies and other planets, and I want to do it right now.
You would need fuel and whatnot for the Normandy's reactor.
We'll figure that out. We'll kill people and burn their bodies for power.
Where are you parking that thing?
I'm not parking. I'm not parking. I'll asphalt a planet and land there. But I'm just saying, as long as I get the Normandy, I'm happy. Normandy for sure. Somebody said chainsaw gun from Gears. I love it. What about you guys? Is there something you'd like to see?
Maybe the Ocarina of Time from Legend of Zelda.
Oh, damn, son.
Dude, that's a good one. Okay.
Universal Translate. Oh, we're pretty close. Sorry, go ahead.
I would get the Nimbus cloud from Dragon Ball. The one where like it's this cloud he sits on and he can fly all over the place, and I just go to work on the Nimbus cloud every day, like
Johnny. When you were young, did you watch the first 3 Star Wars, or did you wait till you were older?
I did watch them when I was my dad showed me to them. So even though I didn't see them like as the first one came out, I saw them sometime after.
So, bro, I wanted a speeder bike from the Ewoks from whatever it is,
absolutely.
The third one. When I was a kid, the speeder bike was my jam. The idea, because I lived on the Oregon coast, the idea of like going up the beaches and stuff on a speeder bike, not having to worry about trails, And
I remember the one that Luke uses when, they show his life in the planet. There was a game around that, like an older, I think, Super Nintendo game.
Gotcha.
That was around him riding that thing, and I had this fantasy of having something like a flying motorcycle. So like a hover motorcycle is really cool.
Yeah, there's something so magical about it. Oh.
Yeah.
Silver put in that, I'm sorry, Silver, I can't pronounce this person's name, but I did see that they passed away. Can you pronounce?
Oh, yeah.
Or come close to it. Yoshitaka Marihama? I can't even pronounce that game name.
Yoshitaka Murayama, yeah.
Okay.
Murayama.
And he made the what games?
He made the Suikoden games for the JRPGs for the Sony PlayStation back in the day. I think that's how they're pronounced. I'm not entirely sure, so please pardon my pronunciation of them.
Yeah, mine too.
But yeah, and I mean, Eiyuden Chronicles was crowdfunded as being like the spiritual successor to them, and is coming later this year. And he sadly passed away only a couple of months before it released. So yeah, very sad. Hopefully, the trailer for Eiyuden Chronicles looks really good. I think it looks really promising, very much in the vein of Suikoden, which, I mean, Suikoden 2 is one of my all-time favorite JRPGs, one of my all-time favorite games. I think it's one of the best written games ever.
Oh, damn.
Ever made. It's really, really good. So hopefully, I mean, it's sad that he won't be there to see the success, but his legacy lives on in that game, and the experiences that he gave to the people.
Pour
who
one out for the
games.
awesome homie who made cool games. That sucks. The other thing, Beast by Nature asked us the same question, what timeline? So it might have been the Twitter the Twitter post. But listen to this. At the very end of this, here's what he writes. And yes, Karak, I know you want more cyberpunk and space. Yep, he knew I was already going to answer it that way, man. He knew. That's it for the main topics, other than whatever we want to talk about when it comes to games as a whole. Is there anything that's been big lately that's been bothering you guys in games, or that's been exciting for games? It can be a new game. It can be just the way you see something happening, new hardware, new whatever. Just the exciting stuff in games.
I wanted to bring up something
Go for it.
that I saw. So I saw your review for Banished, right?
Banishers.
Yeah. And there's something about those games that are sort of like a mid-level of presentation, like they don't have the mocap and the full-on like cinematics that we see in other games. I'm always wondering, like, how important is lip sync for you to keep an interest in the game? Because I'm trying to put my finger on whether that's maybe the cause, like where some games I start skipping dialogue, or, I stop paying attention, is if the faces don't look right when they speak, or, like the mouth is doing something random. Do you guys care about that at all?
I don't think for me it isn't a huge priority, but I think that's largely a product of having consumed so much media, particularly media where things might have been dubbed or the like, where spoken dialogue doesn't necessarily match with the lip movements, particularly with anime, right? Where there's often a dichotomy there, or a contrast there, that I've had to sort of ignore for a very long time. So I've sort of adapted to it, to the point where it isn't necessarily a huge issue, but I do notice it. And I mean, that was actually one of the first things I noticed in Helldivers 2 when you arrive on your ship and you're greeted by
it's so bad
by the other people there. Like the facial expressions and the lip syncing is just
it's horrendous.
Completely horrific, in that game. Not one of its strong suits, but overall, like in a JRPG, I've seen it so many times that, or just the lip syncing just to the text speech, or whatever it is, that I'm just numb to it.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I'm pretty numb to it. I'll mention it because it's definitely something that will bother other people, and I'll talk about it. It would have to be added with bad.
I will notice it.
Yeah, and it has to be added with bad voice to start to impact me. So if it's bad voice and bad lip syncing, that's one thing. If it's a perfect lip sync and a bad voice, I'm going to notice that as well. But overall, I can deal with it. Yeah, I can, and it's all a part of the package. It's like, is the story good? Like, can I buy into this? Because I've watched, like you guys, you watch the occasional foreign movie, and you're hearing one thing and you're seeing a different thing. I can ignore that. But if they're trying to hit English and it doesn't look like they're hitting English and they look like two boards flapping in the wind, it can be bothersome. And I'll mention
like
it. I'll definitely
Hong Kong
be like,
action movie stuff.
Yeah, where they're like,
it's the big one.
Kill you. And you're like,
yeah.
Well, the you part
I
was
think
right.
there are levels because I tried watching that show called Dark that everybody was talking about for a while.
Yes.
And that's a German show, and I dislike how German sounds, so I didn't want to listen to it in German. Usually I go for the original version of whatever it is I'm watching, but for that case, I tried the dub, and it was so horrendous that I thought I had an audio glitch on my TV, like a delay, because they will literally like, have their mouth open when nothing is being said and stuff like that. But I think, in a game, it has to be really bad for it to, and it has to be coupled with also like lackluster voice, I think.
Right.
Because I did notice like Banishers, I did see some issues with lip syncing, but it actually looked overall kind of like, as you say, as a package, it actually looked pretty compelling.
Yeah.
What I was seeing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. Like, yeah, you just have to. I take it all as sort of one giant
like levels, isn't it?
Aplish says
I'm reminiscing about all the old Jackie Chan movies now.
Oh, dude.
Well, I mean, Jet Li, Jackie Chan. Like the thing is it depends. Like I said, if they're trying to hit English and I see that it's really off, and then the spoken word is also off, or what have you. So. Aplish says, Starfield is cyberpunk in space. Are you sure you want more of that? Yes, now doubly more. C-Cave says, I'm still hyped for the full release of NVIDIA Remix. So am I. NVIDIA Remix is awesome, and it's going to help a lot of people take some older games and make them look better. Sailor says, bad localizations are a problem in the industry. Yep. C-Cave says, skipping dialogue.
Yeah, that's actually...
real quick,
just
skipping... I want to add this. C-Cave says, skipping dialogue due to the absence of both facial animations and animations as a whole it sounds like why they would skip it. Go ahead.
Just like replaying Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch recently, the JRPG. I think one of the things I adore so much about that game is that it might be the best English localization I've ever seen, particularly of like a Japanese game. Like there are so many touches in that game with the localization, particularly stuff like the decision to make all the fairies in the game Welsh. And not just that they speak in Welsh, but that like in their written language and every way they incorporate like Welsh slang, like bunting and tidy and all these sort of Welsh colloquialisms that just make it really engrossing and make it really feel like, oh, this is a living part of the world.
Right.
Where that's how you do localization. That's a perfect example of how to do localization right.
Yep. Let's see. Carrie says, I don't understand why mocap and lips syncing is not better in AA games, especially in UE5. The software and equipment is not unattainable. It's skill, one. Number two, it's also the sample rate at which you take the mocap. It's also the rigging later, because all mocapped, or a lot of mocap is fixed and altered later. It also depends on your original recording. Just because something's available in an engine doesn't mean you're going to be fixing it. It's like everybody in NASCAR supposedly has somewhat the same car. You don't see a bunch of people winning. You see the same seven rednecks winning people all the time. Yeah. So you can all have the same thing and not come out with the same.
The manpower needed for like a full rig like mocap operation is high, because there's so many small jobs to that pipeline that like the dude that operates the thing, like the people doing the editing, as you said, there's so many.
Well, many don't mocap still. Remember that. Many just animate. And they don't even mocap those. They animate them, and then that's up to the animators. And we had an animator who worked on the F1 racing games, and he talked about cuts. He worked on cutscenes, and he was talking about like what you get and then have to fix is insanely time intensive. And so to fix those was, at some point you just have to be like, well, their mouth somewhat matches what they said.
You have to accept some, and that's why, sometimes you have poor lip syncing. It's not because people are lazy. I mean, sometimes maybe.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe, but a lot of it's just time, resources. But a lot of the times
it's like, hey, it's the best we could do with our resources, right?
As Secave says this, C-Cave says, cleaning mocap is the longest step, so many steps to do. You just don't just drag and drop the original mocap file. Exactly. I mean, it is so funny that like you get those kind of situations where people just do not understand that they see Troy Baker mocapping something and they're like, oh, it'll be perfect in the thing. And it's like,
yeah. And I mean, you see that with so many things because we just don't know what's involved. Like even stuff like green screens in movies, we take it for granted, but the process of doing a convincing green screen shot, there's a lot of stuff in there. Yeah.
Others, even with film editing, that was one of the things that drove me the most crazy, like editing film, was because very often the audio track would get out of whack. So you would have to spend minutes, sometimes hours, trying to align the audio track frame by frame with where it was supposed to be and where people were talking.
It's funny for me too.
That used to drive me crazy.
And did you do film editing or digital at the time?
Yeah, film editing.
Yeah, no.
No, it was digital editing, not actual. I didn't actually cut with scissors. No.
Dude, I thought you were with the clipper, and I was like, okay, no, man, you got the patience of Job. Yeah. I think that's the thing, especially when I look at editing for, and this happens all the time, editing for video games, where you have like 700 different requirements for one review. Like I'm doing a review right now, and the NDA is ridiculous. I mean, it's very difficult, very difficult. And that's why a lot of people I just don't have the money to hire an editor, and I don't make that much from the reviews to do so. But you look at it and trying to get it to match up, sometimes you just can't. Sometimes you just look at it and you're like, all right, I'm going to have to go with, an example somewhat. And then sometimes I do love putting secrets in the game, like a character fucking up in the background. I do like doing that. That keeps my energy high. Because
the little Easter eggs.
Right, because people don't realize the editors are the ones who probably just go off and commit seppuku somewhere. Because, dude, it's a rough job. Editing sucks balls. I mean, even the editors I know who love it talk about the grind.
The amount of times we were sitting in the editing room and all of a sudden, wait, the sound just got delayed by 3 seconds and the entire thing. How the fuck did that happen?
Dude.
no one knew how it happened. Just it happened. And now we have to put it all back.
Or Premiere, which is what I edit in right now. And I've tried DaVinci Resolve, which is pretty good, has its own issues. But it doesn't like variable frame rate. So if you don't have a locked in frame rate that you're recording at, the game can be an alternate frame rate, but that you're recording at and you throw it up there, the audio will lose sync. And so there were times where like you'd use one particular, device and you forgot to hit, 60 and you hit highest FPS available or whatever.
Throw it into
Premiere.
Whack.
Oh my God. And then Premiere loves to crash. And so now luckily I have the hardware, but I have a thing that's like save every 2 minutes, which then slows down because you're waiting for it to save because you're trying to do something. It's like, hang on, saving, jazz hands. And you're like, okay. And now I can go. And you're in the middle of dragging something, which then fails and goes into the wrong track on Premiere.
And I that sinking feeling, because so many times I didn't save, and I would drag, like you said, and it would freeze, and I got that sinking feeling, like fuck, I haven't saved in 20 minutes.
So Premiere, luckily now, I don't know if it's always existed, but in the last 2 or 3 years has the autosave feature, and I'm aggressive with it, man, very aggressive, because I do fast editing too. Because for example, I'll have 50 hours for a 30-hour game because I've filmed the game plus 20 hours of testing. And so you have to throw 50 hours, which is 2 terabytes of data into Premiere. You have to let Premiere make meta files of all that, which is like 25 minutes. And then you have to drag them around. Then Premiere's like, I don't want to play this at full speed. I'm going to give you 2 frames a second. And you're like, yeah, it sucks. And film editing, same way. Music editing. I know people who don't like mastering at all. Now, I do like mastering. When I make music, I actually like the mastering process because there's something different going on there. Yeah. And so when I'm in like Ableton or something, you're messing around, that's fine. But something about video game editing really drives me nuts sometimes, because no matter what, somebody will be like, you spoiled that the game's called Final Fantasy. And you're like, dude, we've known that they were making 2 games for years. This is the first of the games. Why would you be mad at that? And then sometimes you will make mistakes, but you'll have, you won't show exactly what's to be shown, or somebody will say, hey, why didn't you show the end game? It's like, because the NDA shows I can show the first 10 fucking minutes of this thing. Like there's so many different things that go on. Movie editors are even harder, because that's why I would never want to do movies, because I think it would destroy my love of whatever I created. I just don't think I could sit through the editing process.
It's like making burgers and then hating burgers.
Oh, dude, yeah, that would be rough. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is an element, like there often is, where when you've done something, where you start to see all the things, you see the wires that are holding up.
The wires,
right? Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, that's why you usually have two types of people, the creative and the editor. It's just almost always that way. It happens a lot. And you have, like, with directors, the assistant director, or like George Lucas had his wife, somebody to like help him along, because a lot of people can't do it all. And if you can, you're either taking a long time or your quality suffers. And I've been at the end of both. It's absolutely a thing. There's a different mindset for both, man. There's a different... Like, I'll be like, I want to show everything. And they'll say, your review can't be longer than, 22 minutes. And you're like, I'm at 24 minutes. I don't want to cut 2 minutes out. I'm talking about the music. Or, just all kinds of crazy shit that goes on.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I watch a movie or a show, I get really distracted by how the hell did they shoot this?
Scene?
And it could be anything. It could be like a scene in a courthouse where it's an enclosed space and you have angles for everybody in the courtroom, right?
Yeah.
But like, of course, you see no cameras. So like in my head, because I don't know about cinematography, it's almost more distracting because I don't know how it's done. Like in my head, I'm paralyzed. I'm not even following the plot. I'm like, but hold on. How does fucking, Robert De Niro have a close-up right here? He's against a wall. Like, what's going on? You know what I mean?
That's actually an aspect that you don't lose with knowledge. I still continually have that, where I wonder at how the hell did they logistically get organized this? Like one of the most impressive movies I've ever seen is a Russian movie called Russian Ark from the early 2000s. It's like an hour and a half nearly, and the entire thing is one single take. And it's not like a simple movie. It's a movie that tells the entire sort of history of the Russian imperial Tsarist family from like the early or late 18th century up until the Russian Revolution, basically. And it does it through the Hermitage Palace in St. Petersburg, where the camera travels through there. And there are like large ballroom sequences. There are hundreds of extras, live musical performances with orchestras. And it's all organized through one single take. That's basically a huge theater performance. Completely? Yes, to the second. The entire sequence of 1 minute and for 90 minutes. And
that's
it's
almost
just
a flex.
Inspiring to sort of see.
That's almost a flex, because you wouldn't have to do it in one take. You can stop and like continue, but
yeah.
I did want, so two things I pointed out. One thing, we were talking about like passion and, are you a creative or an editor? I did tell somebody yesterday that if I like games more than I ever did, even before reviewing. And I told them if I ever do hate games, where you turn your passion into your job, I'll quit. Like, I'll quit that day. I'll just be like, oh, I'm done. Like, this isn't fun anymore. In fact, I can only create if I like something. But when you guys were talking about flexes, Shaun of the Dead has a flex. Now, this is a movie I don't like. I don't find Shaun of the Dead funny or enjoyable in any way, but there is a flex in that for filmmaking that is beyond belief. There's a scene when he comes out of his house and he goes to the supermarket across the street, and then the exact same setup after the apocalypse, shot for shot, movement for movement, and you can see the passage of time, and it is fucking phenomenal. And what was funny is why I know it's a flex is because they said the director just kept adding shit to the scene so that they could not pull it. So the editors knew so much money was spent. There was no fucking chance somebody was going to pull that from the movie. And watching that scene and seeing the two back to back or side to side in YouTube, you're just like, how the hell did they do? That was a lot of work. I mean, all the way down the road, all the same cars, and like a guy washing the front of a windshield, and then when he walks by it, there's like a cone, a safety cone smashed through it or something. All these little bits and these little scenes. Hedges have died where they were alive when he went through the first time. Really just incredible moment. Like one of those times where you're like, yeah, that person knew what they were doing. Like that was a true flex. That was like, I can do what I want. Do you know what else is a flex? I got to say this, man. This is no lie. Usually I'm not hugely, I like sequels, but usually there's something missing. But I got to tell you guys, the longer I watch this movie, and I've watched it probably 11 times, I've watched the original well more than 100, but the Blade Runner sequel, might be one of the
2049.
2049 might be one of the most awe-inspiring movies I've ever seen. So when I watch movies, usually I'm doing something. That's just the way I am. That's one of the first movies in maybe 2 decades where I stopped everything, and within the first like 5 minutes was like, what the fuck? Stopped everything, moved to another chair, got the TV, sat down and watched that. And I got to admit to you guys, I think I like it better than the original, which depending on who you are, that might be considered a sin. But
No, actually,
the cinematography in number 2 is like, are you fucking kidding me?
I adore the first movie, but I think it does have a number of flaws with like the script and character. Where I like I actually agree with you that I think 2049 is actually a better movie. The only real problem I have with 2049 is Jared Leto.
You don't like?
I didn't mind him in that scene because the original guy was weird too. So I guess I just took it. And I get you. Some actors I just don't. Right. Also, yeah, I get it. I thought it was. Yeah, I get it. I
think felt. I guess for me, he felt like he wasn't. Yeah, he didn't feel like part of the world where Tyrell did.
Yep. No, I get it.
Yeah. And he tends to overact a little bit, but I
don't think he did in that one. But
I thought that character was a grandiose, like
he was. Yes,
and he was Crunch Factor 5, bro. He was the guy who walks in and has a skeleton above his power bar because you're not supposed to fight him because he's like on another level. You're just like, whoa.
Another level.
Back the
so
fuck
I thought
up
for
and
me
leave
it
the room.
worked.
Yeah.
Like that, that portrayal.
That was that. There's something about that second movie, man. And I don't get
down
enamored
to every
anymore.
little detail. Like when you look at almost every scene, there's something interesting going on with color and like what's in the background. And there's a light reflecting there with a really interesting color and contrast to what's in the front. I'm not
dramatically
a big
different, by the
guy,
way, Johnny, than the first one. That's the other positive. They changed the entire color and like feel into this second one so that they feel like their own things at a different time frame. It just worked really well.
Very
man.
unique.
Yeah. And I would love to see that in a game, because I do like Cyberpunk. It
wasn't just a repeat of the first one.
Right. It wasn't at all.
Very much its own thing.
Which is why when you get a game, sometimes it really changes it up, depending on how well it's done. I really like that too. I just have not been a big fan of sequels of things. Usually, I find them fun. For example, John Wick, I felt they progressively got lesser than as they went forward. I still love them. They're hilarious. They're fucking fun as hell. But the first one was like, boom, that's a movie.
Yeah.
That's a movie. And you can do 2 if you want. But that's the shit. And then you got 2 and you're like, okay, that's really good. There's some, but it's, it's not as tight. Sometimes there's been a sequel I've loved. Superman 2, I think, is one of my favorite movies of all time.
I mean,
and
Mad Max.
I like the original. Mad Max. Road Warrior.
Road Warrior.
Dude, that movie is so much better than the original. I'm sorry. That original movie is almost unwatchable now. And then I see Road Warrior, and I watched it maybe 3 weeks ago. And I was like, dude, Mel Gibson rocked that entire thing. And yes, I like it more than Fury Road. What were you going to say?
Okay, I was getting that confused. That's the one with Charlize, right?
Yeah.
Fury Road.
Fury Road is with Charlize.
Charlize. Yeah, Charlize.
Charlize.
That's what we'll call her. Charlize Theron. Charles Theron? Yeah. Dude, I'm telling you. Did you guys see the new one yet? The brand new Road Warrior? Or is that out?
Furiosa? No.
Is it out?
I don't think it's opened yet.
Oh, okay. A really bad blue screen on that movie, man. I'm sorry. It looks like they spent $11 on that fucking
granted, green screen.
Aliens versus Alien. That's a good one. I think I still like Alien 1 better. I loved Aliens. It's a great movie, but Alien 1 was a different vibe.
I like some of the
very
side
much.
ones.
I mean, Aliens is more of a thriller than it is like a horror movie.
Oh
yeah,
Alien is a conventional horror movie.
I mean, it is horror. So. I mean, I shit my pants on that.
Yeah, 1 is.
But so but you can have suspense and tension in a thriller.
Yeah,
that makes you.
Also, for me, this sounds weird, and it's probably not the right way to describe this, but I'm going to do it anyway. 1 is horror, 2 is terror. And to me, terror is terrifying, but I can still make actions. Horror was where everybody froze at times, except for Ripley. But people were like, oh. What I liked about in 2, they were action characters. They knew they were still terrified. They were like, "What?" You hear the guy. I don't know if you've been keeping up on current events, but I wouldn't expect even that
Bill Paxton
line.
Hudson.
Bill Paxton.
Game over,
I wouldn't
man.
even expected that line in a horror movie, but in a terrifying moment and in a movie that has terror, I'm totally fine with that. And it works perfect in that movie, where you see military guys terrified. But horrified to me means frozen. Something about horror if I'm terrified, I guess, again, that's not even the right terminology. But for me, in my brain, I don't think of the second one as horror. I think of it as like action and terrifying at times. But, those are great movies. Those are... I can watch all the Alien movies.
They did body horror.
Alien 4, really?
Best.
I can watch... So Alien 4 is...
I mean, did I have Ron Perlman, I guess?
Alien 3 is in the prison, right? And Alien 4 is where she gives birth to the weird albino baby alien.
Yes.
So I do like that because of Ron Perlman. Exactly. You hit it on the head. And the weird characters. But I see it. But here's one I do like that sort of got shit on. And I can see why, especially for its copies. But I actually like Requiem, which is Alien versus Predator, which is where it's in the forest town, the Pacific Northwest forest town. And they've got a basic rip-off Ripley character in there. But I like some of the deaths. And one of the scariest and creepiest scenes ever is when the alien opens the door to the maternity ward and there's all the babies and just closes the door behind it. And you're like, oh no, it's going to infect all the babies. It was pretty gnarly.
There's something about the body horror of them like coming out of the people that stuck with me like no other movie ever.
Yeah, dude, they're awesome. What about scary games? Are there any that aren't jump scares that you guys have really liked that are like
I mean still Phasmophobia, I would say.
Phasmophobia. Definitely. I like Pandemonium. No, it's the point and click in the horror penitentiary. No, Pandemonium Penitentiary. It's one of my favorite games
Amnesia
of all time. No, because Pandemonium's also is a jumping game. It's a platformer as well with a jester and a guy. Pandemonium Penitentiary. Anybody in chat? It's a horror game that's point and click where you start as a character with bandages on your head. You're literally a bandaged up like victim. Pandemonium? Penumbra? No. There's so many P games in horror. There's Pathologic. Oh my God, there's a lot of P games in horror. It's a 4-disc point and click, Silver. And you don't remember this either, huh? Pandemonium.
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
Sanitarium. Maybe it's Sanitarium. Let me check. Sanitarium.
It's a good Metallica song
point
at the very
and
least.
Click. Yeah, exactly. And I think when I play Sanitarium on Steam, yep, that's what it is. Thank you. Sanitarium is a great scary game. 1996. That's an old fucking game.
Yeah. I mean, it would have to be for the 4 CDs.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, that is true. I should have. Yeah, I could have just said pre-2005. What? Yeah. Yeah, there's, I think. Go ahead.
What I really like about Phasmophobia is just the audio design of that game. From the moment you step in the door into the building, like there's this sort of dystony, or like a really uncomfortable hum that's at the back of your...
Oh, like a dissonant hum or discordant? Something that's like in the back?
A discordant note.
Dude. Those
were constantly there and makes you deeply uncomfortable from the moment you step inside. Dude, and then you're as you're walking around, you're like intently listening for any clues that the ghost is there or where the ghost might be. And then things ramp up from there with ghost whispers and other sounds and ghost events and whatever else happens. And just the combination of that, particularly when you're playing it with people, that really creates something that's very unique and very special.
You know how Rain, if you want to mimic Rain in like a cheap audiobook, you can just go shh, because that's what it sounds like the hush, right? But there's something about discordant sound that does the same thing. But you can't, it's not always the same. That discordant, it's off kilter a little bit. And man, if they hit it right, and it's not always right, but when they hit it right, it almost makes your stomach sick. It makes you, there's like this thing where you're like, this is not right.
It's just this constant hum that's there.
Shit is awesome. Some horror movies do it and they overuse it, but in games, if it's done really well, it can make you go like, what's happening right now? I love that, man. It's so, again, people play, games without the sound and music on. Just kills my soul. Makes me want to die inside. Whenever I hear, or so one of my friends still plays on a mono TV. You could also
just play it, turn off the television and just play it with the gamepad.
Might as well just turn off the goddamn TV then. Now we sound old. It looks like people are talking about horror games in here. Fatal Frame, Darkseed. Wow, Darkseed's back in the days. Darkseed was basically like a lot of Alien and HG Geiger. What's his fucking name? Is it HC or HG? HG Geiger. HR Geiger. Thank you.
Wasn't it HR or was it HG?
HG, I think.
It's too many Lovecrafts and too many first letters. HR. The audio in Dead Space keeps you on edge. Doom Reaper says. Augur says Scary Movie 2 Exorcist scene was just hilarious. Well, sometimes scary ones don't work so well when they
they don't. You have to put that into the context of how it works now and how it worked at the time.
Absolutely.
Like the exorcism scene today isn't particularly shocking or horrifying in the context of everything that's come out since The Exorcist.
Yeah, but it was terrifying.
Back when The Exorcist came out, that thing was that made an impact. Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why we got all the stuff that came after.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see with games too how games have adjusted. You had Scorn, which I really wasn't a huge fan of, where it sort of just went too far, and it was like, hey, look at this weird thing. You're going to use bodies as equipment and stuff, and it sort of just went the body horror route to do it. It didn't feel like there was a lot of thought. But then you do get a game like Control. I'm not going to say Control was ever scary. Control was never scary, but Control has
it was tense,
awkward, tense feeling to it. Yeah. Yes. And the ultimate, the crazy, when a human looks at something like In the Mouth of Madness, one of my favorite movies of all time, when reality breaks a little bit, that is what, to me, like, that shit's, because it's always a little bit in science. It's like, well, if there are parallel worlds, is that possible? And I love those kind of games when they hit it right. Control really nailed that for me. Fear. Yeah, Fear was good. Fear was definitely good. Clock Tower, very good. What were you going to say?
Fear, just like the ending of Fear 2 is still one of the things that few endings that just left me with sort of, what? Whoa.
In a good way, whoa, or in a, oh my God, this ripped me off, whoa?
Not ripped me off, but I guess shocked. It actually managed to shock me, I guess.
That's cool.
Because I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the ending to Fear 2, but it's pretty.
Fear games, I just never really.
I mean, basically, you spend pretty most of Fear 2 getting stalked by Alma, the girl ghost, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the game, you have a boss battle in your mind, a psychic boss battle with another guy, and you're basically fighting over Alma because Alma is romantically fixated on you. And as you are fighting this boss battle psychically, Alma is raping you physically in the actual physical world and impregnating herself with your child in the ending.
Bro.
Yes. And you get as you're fighting the boss battle, and as you're getting through the multiple tiers of the boss battle, each tier is sort of segmented by a flash that you get to the real world of Alma mounting you and ripping you.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
In first person, yeah.
Wow, that is very risque.
That is very risque, and it brings up a point too. It brings up a interesting point for me. Would that game with that kind of content be released now, with a rape scene at the end? Do we think that would? Do we think companies would?
I think with social media, there would certainly be a substantial reaction to that.
Yeah,
scene.
There would be substantial reaction. Now, I know I've heard you can't, rape a guy. We've heard those. Obviously you can. There are ways, but this is a supernatural game, supernatural boner. Who knows how it all happens, but it does happen. With the flashes and stuff, that could be pretty risque. That would be an interesting sell to a publisher right now, if you were going to remake Fear 2, let's say, and say we're going to leave in the scene.
It's a big trigger for a lot of people,
It's a big trigger for a lot of people, yeah. But here's the thing. I do believe in the warning at the starting of games. I do. I firmly do. Yeah. I believe we should have them, and that if you want to show something, you should be able to, because it is games. You should be. It doesn't matter if somebody finds it like questionable or you got the ratings board.
You can show it, but then you're also open to criticism for showing it.
You are. You are, but there's a difference between criticism and stymieing it ever coming out.
Yeah.
The criticism should be at the release, and did it work or did it not work? I mean, somebody's always going to say shouldn't be in there. That's criticism in a way, but as long as they can explain themselves. I would like to see that kind of stuff, but not all the time. I think that's a heady game. You know, I certainly wouldn't be playing those games all the time, but that's, she was a terrifying character anyway. So like the idea that you had no control sort of flips things on its side. I wasn't aware of that ending. That's interesting to me. Yeah, I was not aware at all. I haven't seen another game go that far. That's pretty far. I mean, in fact, I would say of all the horror games I've played, that might be the farthest of the far that I can personally
it is
remember.
Kind of funny because of how it's flown under the radar from after all these years later, sort of.
You mean under the radar of discussion, or
yes.
Yeah, especially because now
or maybe that's just telling of how few people actually finished Fear 2. I don't know.
Well, it could be, but it wouldn't matter. We have people bitching about stuff they never even experienced and pretending it scarred them. So when you have the desire for people to go back and cancel somebody 20 years ago for something they did on TV, which has happened all the time, it is interesting for that game. But I think that I would like to see that ending. I'll probably look it up and see how it's handled, because that's a very interesting ending and very, very pointed. You got to really know. You got to really know exactly what you want to deliver in a game like that, because that ending right there, that's a tough ending. And maybe I could suggest that if your desire was to release a game like that, you could possibly even have a difficulty setting or a setting that says suggestion of this or this on or off, and then that ending would just show the imaginary battle, maybe, and then you know what I mean. You could probably do something like that.
It wouldn't cut to her moaning.
I mean, to me, that's an accessibility thing, because some people have a fear of deep water and they might want to play a game. We've seen games replace spiders with fucking bears and stuff. I don't really have an issue with it. I also think that I don't have an issue with the developer saying there's spiders in our game. Deal with it. It's up to the company, and do they want those sales?
Yeah, if there's a warning, that's fine.
Stefan says definitely agree about the warning. It doesn't detract from the game. Kind of weird when they have one. Kind of weird when that one friend in the Discord said that they were peeved by the Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3 remastered's warning. Oh, they had a racism warning. By the way, this came up in the last podcast. I wanted to see what you guys think of this. Well, in this conversation here, we know Resident Evil's getting all the remakes, right? Resident Evil 5 has things that people consider problematic in it about racism and stuff.
Yeah, I would definitely consider some.
Yeah, and I brought up that Code Veronica has a couple things that are a little odd, and maybe that's why they're not talking about Code Veronica ever. And I had forgotten, and somebody pointed out to me. You guys think with a Resident Evil 5, do you think... I don't believe Capcom would change anything. I think Capcom would simply put a warning at the front if they remake 5. Correct? You guys don't think they would? I mean, otherwise, you're really
They might.
it.
I think they might just... The alternative might be that they might just retool some of the enemies.
Right. You could retool
the enemy designs, like some of the like African natives with the spears and the shields and whatnot. Very stereotypical sort of presentation at the time.
The presentation of it versus because I was going to say
might get changed.
Right. That makes sense, especially when you look at those are places where Ebola and stuff break out because of the forests and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense that certain people are there, just like it would for the Pacific Northwest. If you came to my town, certain people would be here and they would all look like loggers. So if loggers got up and, that wouldn't be a thing. But with Resident Evil, you look at it and you're like, okay, I could see. But I've always wondered, because I think it'll be remade. I think it's planning to be remade. But again, Code Veronica is not on that list. I think Game Dev was telling me Code Veronica wasn't on the remake question list. And I've wondered if there was, is there an IP issue with Code Veronica? Or is it that there was a sexuality issue with one of the characters, if I remember right? Or if this person was reminding me right? I don't know. I've always wondered why Code Veronica never gets remade, never gets talked about, because it is a classic, it's a classic Resident Evil. It's one of their main ones. Well, not main, I guess, because it doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a number, right? Their main ones are numbered, right? So, okay. Maybe that's why. Interesting discussion around it, though. I can't wait to see more
I
of those.
understand also because it is kind of an important part of the Resident Evil timeline, where it establishes Wesker's return and whatnot.
And it covers a lot, even though it is called Code Veronica, it actually does, and it's a side one. It's a main one in the lore.
And it's
So
the one
can-
where Resident Evil 4 goes with Leon. Code Veronica is the one that goes with Claire after Resident Evil 2.
After Resident Evil 2. Yeah. That's awesome, man. I love the idea of it. I want to see, you know, stuff like that. I think the rating system should be used in the proper way. Let people make the game, and then, you know, we'll deal with it as consumers.
So yeah, I mean, Code Veronica would be the obvious next one, given that they've just remade 4.
I know, but Silver, I'm telling you, it's the redheaded stepchild. It's the New Vegas / Batman Arkham Origins, man. They don't mention them. Those 3 games are suspiciously absent every time we start talking about this, and I don't know why. I don't get it. I mean, I get it. I don't get it. I do understand more with Batman Arkham Origins, right? Different developer, different voice actors, but, well, switch voice actors, I guess, on some of the parts. But I just want them to be remade. And New Vegas, everybody likes, other than me. Everybody likes it more than most, and I like it. I'm just not in love with it. But it's never mentioned either. You know, I don't know if that's heat between Bethesda and Obsidian, or, you know, what that is. But I would kill to see those.
Between Bethesda and Obsidian, yeah. But I mean,
so?
you would think that could be fixed now, given the Microsoft takeover. But
SBZ says the sexuality thing does exist and it's a bit spoilery. Oh, if you say sexuality is coming in this game, that's spoilery? Nah, I don't think so.
You know, I don't think so.
Nah, I don't think so, because that would be like saying there's horror in this horror game. You can say body
some
horror.
Games,
that's
some games will say, you know, trigger warning, suicide. Stuff.
Yeah, I don't. That's
not spoiling. Okay, the game contains a suicide. You know, come on.
I mean, even the ratings state somewhat naked people, you know, nudity or whatever, violence. Even though those are pretty. Once David Caruso put his White Moon ass on NYPD Blue, all of American TV changed.
Sexual violence, and anybody who has a trigger, you know, close to that will know to avoid it.
Probably, right? Yeah, and basically just, I think, or you could say, I don't want to see the spoiler, but I'm okay with everything. But I don't think anybody would choose that. That seems like a really odd thing. Click this to open the spoiler.
There are some things where, the times have changed and some stuff now isn't cool. Like, you know, they did the Mass Effect remake and they didn't show Miranda's ass as much, right?
God, I forgot about that, yeah.
That's a small modification because now it's, you know, we're trying not to objectify as much.
It was all gratuitous, frankly, even at the time.
I would argue, though, that you could say it was gratuitous at the time. I would argue, I think, adequately, that if it was gratuitous at the time and they put it in, it's fine to be gratuitous now and put it in. I know the objectification of things, but guys, we're talking about Final Fantasies. We're talking about Mass Effects. We're talking about they objectify male, you know, warriors of every color. They objectify. I mean, it's I don't know why, but there's a nervousness
it's also
around
okay
that.
It's also okay to say, oh, we don't really want that anymore.
New
we
makers
want to do something else.
They're not the same makers. You know, if it was the doctors still, maybe they'd say, I don't want to remove it, and then it would have been there. Yeah, you can definitely change things. There's nothing wrong with that. It's weird that was changed. Alternatively,
you do have Kojima, who still isn't shy about.
Oh my god, dude! Metal Gear Phantom Pain was ridiculous, and I'm all for sexy people in games and TV shows. I'm saying that was the most recent one for me. Was Phantom Pain. Yeah,
but I mean, Metal Gear Solid 4 with like the female assassins, like the octopus and whatnot, like the way they were sexualized as well.
It is weird too, Silver. That it is odd to me that we're getting a lot of other entertainment spectrums saying it's okay, and you have to, you know, if you want to watch this, like The Boys, got to live with it. Like The Boys gives you a warning. The Boys goes farther than any game has gone. I mean, for the most part. You know, orgy scenes where you're running through some dude's urethra, that's pretty harsh. That's pretty crazy.
Superpower orgy.
And yet games have gone the opposite, and they're trying to remove that. And it's like, I don't know. The interaction is there, though. I think that's a big thing. Games are interactive, and there's something about that puts people slightly on edge. You know, we saw the guy get his YouTube channel deleted because he took all the women in Red Dead 2 and put them on a train trestle to get hit. And I was like, 5 years ago, that would have been a blooper reel. Yeah. And it could have been guys. I get that it was about suffrage, but it was a character base that bothered him, so he put him on there. And I was stunned that YouTube was like, we're deleting that channel. There might have been other stuff, but that was what I had heard. I want to read a super chat here real quick. Jackson Fox, $5 super chat. Amazing podcast. I've been listening for 2 years straight. Is it possible to get all of your gamer tags to follow on PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam? You can get theirs. I can give you my non-NDA one, but I don't even use it. Now I mostly do my games on the NDA one.
I think the best place is like the Discord, where we kind of can.
Yeah, or on like Johnny, who has
play games
Johnny
together.
Plays Live. Sometimes he'll talk. He might play with people who are around, but I would say for the most part,
that too.
I think, in all honesty, and this is just me being honest, you guys can argue with me. I think the honest truth is a lot of us don't want to give out our gamer tags to a bunch of people because you can't give it out to one person in a chat. Everybody will have it, and
I think it's
like,
a lot better if it comes
sure.
like through the Discord where we're chatting
and you can
it's
see
like,
what
hey,
somebody's
I'm playing
like.
this game, and someone is saying, hey, I'm looking for someone to play, and then you kind of team up. That's a bit more organic. Because when you throw out your user, what happens is you can get like a bunch of people adding you, and it's impossible to keep track of who was that person? Did I play with them? So I think it's just a lot better, if we chat in the Discord, if there's a game we're all playing.
So Johnny, let me tell you a funny story. A couple days ago, I thought maybe you were in this chat, but we were in a chat. There's about 25 people in the Discord chat. We were just having a great time, and somebody said, I want to play this game with somebody else. And they said, okay. And they said, give me your friend code, DM me your friend code. And the guy just blurted out, like, he's like, oh, no, we'll just do the Steam name. And even in there, which is a protected group, they're in the Discord 2 levels deep. Even us stopped it. And we're like, whoa. Don't just be posting, only post it if you want to post it. Because if you post that out, you're going to have, a spam bot could get in there and find that you posted your Steam link and send you an email that says, click on my new game.exe. And you click it and your Discord channel's hacked.
Yeah, come vote for my CS team.
Yeah. It was funny because we were all, whoa, we usually use the code from the game, not our full Steam code, unless that person wants to give it out, But yeah, it was funny. I guess with privacy concerns these days, a lot of people are a little less apt to give their stuff out.
Privacy, how they say it over here. Privacy.
Caribbean and Caribbean bothers the shit out of me. I hate it. Toledo.
Yeah, some stuff like Kim
or not
Basinger,
Toledo, but Oregon and Oregon.
Bassinger.
Kim Basinger? It's Basinger, right?
Basinger.
Or Basinger is. I have heard
Basinger?
that too. I have heard Basinger.
It's never
How does
been
she pronounce
settled.
it? Yeah, it's never been settled.
Pronounced it Basinger.
No one knows.
I think Basinger. I think how it's pronounced. Yeah, Karak, I'm playing Starfield. Still a great game after so many hours into it. Can't wait for the DLC. Excellent. Yeah, I played a bunch of Starfield the last couple weeks. I've been doing Lego at night, doing reviews, but then I break off at a certain time. We got all the way through 5 or 6 shows. Eureka, we rewatched all of it. Last of Us, the TV show, rewatched all of it.
Rewatch?
Finished The Lost. Yeah, we finished a bunch, man. Usually it's like 4 episodes a night.
And you know what's
she
funny,
does Lego
dude?
and I play Starfield. What?
I told you like the last and first time I watched Lost was when I was 19 years old. That's like, many years ago, over 10 years ago. And dude, I completely misremembered the ending.
Oh, did you?
And I'm not going to spoil it here, but in my mind, this is not the ending. In my mind, I thought it was like a dream where the island didn't happen.
Oh, gotcha.
And for all these years, I'm now
Don't
34.
say much more, though.
Since I was 19, I won't say anything else.
That's what you thought, though, since you were 19?
I thought that the whole show was a dream.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off so much. And all these years, I was wrong. So there you go.
You're not the only one who had that interpretation.
Yeah, I think the interpretation, they've
people.
stated what the end is, but it's like, it works for me overall. I was not too bothered by it. I'm not, a lot of TV shows will get dinged.
I like the ending.
For wrapping up the ending. And it's hard to wrap up an ending of a show that's like 6 seasons long or whatever. Most shows,
I was really sad for it to be ending, even though I had already watched it. It's like, it's still...
Dude, this entire the Johnny Mandela effect Johnny had. Yeah, game dev. That's exactly. Yeah, Johnny had his own version of Mandela.
There are some absolutely amazing single episodes of Lost.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some stinkers that even I don't watch too closely when they're on. But I've always been of the impression that most shows, just like movies, will have a gap, and the gap will be an episode just because that's sort of how it works. It's never bothered me.
the thing I really like about the show, and I really appreciate, is how character driven it is.
Absolutely.
That the plot is completely secondary. Like it's not really all that important what the island is or whatever. All these secrets or mysteries aren't really all that important.
It's how they got there. The important thing
is the characters and the relationships and how they interact with each other.
Yeah, I thought that was a really like touching,
one of the advice we give a lot of D&D players, especially DMs who are brand new, will be like, well, watch a show, get a couple character archetypes from a show and use them as NPCs. Don't name them the same thing, but, get some ideas from them and hope you role play them. And I got to tell you, Lost is like a never-ending treasure trove for new DMs to go like, oh, okay. And I'm like, dude, if you like two characters and how they deal with each other in the show, throw that in your game, adjust it for fantasy, and I tell you, 99% of players will never pick up on it, and they'll just be like, these two characters are really interesting. Like
it's like, really what would Jack do?
What would Jack do? That's exactly it. What would Charlie do? Like what? And they, if you want an example of cowardice, you have it. Bravery, you have it. Failure under stress, you have it. Success under stress, you have it. You have.
By the way, Charlie is the only character that annoyed me beyond measure. Bro, I enjoyed the flat.
Come on, dude, there's two. Come on, no. Charlie and the blonde.
Shannon?
Shannon.
Okay. I'll give you Shannon.
Come on. I'll give you Shannon. All right. Because we were gonna have it out. There is no way I was letting you out of here without mentioning Shannon.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you Shannon. I thought Sun was on the limit. Like there were parts of the show where
and hated episodes with her.
Yeah, like some were a bit of a drag, but overall, I thought almost every character had really interesting flashbacks.
Dude, I'm telling you, if you watched Lost and liked it, you have to watch From, because it's got.
I have. I've seen it's been released.
It is It is Lost, similar vibe, but with vampires in a way. It is so good, man. It is so good. All right,
and it's cool to see. Yeah, we should wrap it up. It's cool to see that guy, the same actor.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
Mike. Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah, he's awesome in both of them, and I admit I did not like his character at all in Lost. He was very close to Shannon.
He was very angry. It made me angry that he was so angry at everybody.
Yes, and when you see somebody stymie a situation, and you get the 90210 effect where somebody's like, "Don't tell anybody," and you're like, "I just told Joe I would tell him everything," and you're like, "This will be the plot of the entire season." You're fuck. Yes. That's the way he was through the entire show. God. You're like, dude, just fucking fix your shit, man. But he does improve, for sure. He definitely improves. But yeah, Charlie and a couple others, like, depending
fair
on...
enough. There are a couple others.
Yeah, there are a couple others. But I think you're right. I think those two were bothersome the most.
There
but
are
then
a couple
you have
others.
The second, you have S tier, hateable characters.
S tier, yeah.
Right? And then you got the A, B, C, D. And I know a lot of people, and I'll tell you right now, I would have, within the first day, burned Kate in a coffin and buried her. She is a louse human, a fucking drag on society. Kate, I would have absolutely drowned her.
I was way too distracted because she was my biggest crush, as I was growing up.
Sawyer was the same way for a lot of girls. A lot of my friends were like, "Oh, Sawyer," and I'm like, "Dude, he's such a piece of shit. I love him. I love him, but he's such a sleazebag. He's so." And he's awesome. He's got a great character. See, again, character-driven show. And this is why games, I wish games would do this more, like generate this stuff, this lore behind the scenes
make you
more.
Feel stuff about characters too.
Yes. It would be great to see that. Like when we played Mass Effect Andromeda, nothing mattered. It was like you could have done some stuff to make those characters mean more. I think that we see that a lot.
Nobody remembers Nikki and Paolo. Someone mentioned those.
But it's funny how that stuff can sometimes develop on its own in a game like XCOM, right? Where
you mean like its own fiction, fan fiction?
No, not really fan fiction, but just through
Actions?
The emergent sequence of the gameplay, where in XCOM, like you have one particular Marine who keeps missing his shots, and so you start to shape a narrative around that Marine in your mind that I'm never going to go to him ever again, even though it's really just a number game.
Johnny was that guy for me.
Maybe you have one who always comes in really clutch, and so you start to make that narrative around him, right? And so you start to build these stories around these characters as as the gameplay progresses.
I named all my characters after you guys, dressed them like you guys, put Total Biscuit in there, a couple other people.
Yeah, I remember.
Total Biscuit was a pretty good sniper. He lasted a couple episodes. Johnny couldn't hit for shit, but I switched the way you played, and it worked quite well. You stayed alive longer than anybody else. But those things are awesome. You're playing with toys, guys. I don't care what anybody says. It's the digital equivalent of grabbing a G.I. Joe character in the dirt and just digging in the dirt and making a sandcastle or a dirt castle. Like, that's all it is. All right. We're going to get going here. I want to thank everybody. We're at 3 hours and 33 minutes of the podcast. Still 30 minutes longer than the Modern Warfare campaign, even played on the hardest. If you guys want to reward us, come to the Discord, become a YouTube member. It absolutely helps. Follow Johnny on Johnny Plays Live on Twitch, and he'll be streaming a game tomorrow, which is...
Infinite Wealth, the Yakuza.
Infinite Wealth, Yakuza. All right, everybody. I hope you have an awesome week. Thank you for watching. Peace out.
See you next time.